Hi, I'm Pat Thatcher.
And I'm Margaret Gifford. We're from Sotheby's International Realty.
I was taking some home buyers on a tour the other week, one of my familiarization tours of Falmouth. Brother, this is a gorgeous town we live in.
And we have more shoreline than any other town on the Cape. The gardens have been beautiful, the light is stunning, and the changing seasons bring exquisite color to the marshes.
It is a beautiful place to live.
We are so lucky.
Nestled in a classic New England setting amid 200-year-old elm trees and charming colonial homes, stately sea captains' homes, and charming Cape Cod salt boxes, Shoreway Acres is a graceful blend of Cape Cod's past and present. Shoreway Acres, proud sponsor of Falmouth Community Television.
Good evening. I'll call the meeting to order, the Board of Selectmen, on Monday, November 23rd, 2015. I'll invite you all to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first order of business is announcements. Do we have announcements from the Board of Selectmen? I have two. One, I just wanted to report back to the board an article I read in the paper today about the service center and the wonderful showing they had yesterday of over 250 people at the service center volunteering. Over 700 turkeys were dropped off, 2,500 different boxes and cans of food. And it was just amazing, but actually not that amazing. This is Falmouth. This is what a Falmouth does, but just a reminder of what a fantastic town we live in, where people really step forward to take care of those people who are in need at this time. And it just made me very proud to be able to read about that and see what people are doing. Second announcement has to do with a lease agreement that we have with the Steamship Authority that Ms. Moran and I have been working for about 5 or 6 months trying to get this set up in place because the lease does run out at the end of this year. We've been able to establish a 5-year lease with the Steamship Authority, which provides that the town receives 25% of the gross that the Steamship Authority receives for parking in Woods Hole in the lot that the town owns. They'll also be providing 40, possibly up to 45 spots for the town to divvy out however we see fit in a fairly complicated system to businesses in Woods Hole to be able to alleviate some of the parking on the streets of Woods Hole. And also they will be ensuring that there's full use of the bike path during the renovation parts of the steamship, during their renovation of the Steamship Authority down in Woods Hole. Any other announcements? All right, time for a public comment. If there's anyone who'd like to make public comment on something that is not on our agenda this evening, please come forward and hold your comments to 2 minutes. All right, if there's no one here for public comment, we're going to move on to summary actions. We do have a public hearing officially scheduled for 7:15, and we have to hold that until 7:15. Sorry, Jennifer, we can't do that quicker than that. So we have our licenses. We have an application for a change of ownership. This is, I'm sorry, we have minutes. I've skipped our minutes. All right. We have minutes from our meetings before town meeting on November 9th, our open session. Any changes to the minutes of November 9th? Yep,
Yes, one on page 2.
Patterson?
Actually noted this to Jennifer.
Page 2?
If you go down to where it's the first bold line, it says vote yes for, should be no one. Motion passed.
There weren't 9 of us voting that night?
Apparently not. At least
Forward.
not to my memory, anyway.
And it passed also in that, okay, 4 to 1. All right, so with that correction and the other changes, all those in favor say, motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right, next is Tuesday, November 10th, regular minutes.
I have one name correction.
Okay,
Would be the third paragraph from the bottom, I guess, then. And the last line, it should be Brian Curry. Our town planner, just to and correct the name spelling.
I guess I just don't see where you are.
Say it again, the direction where it was.
On the first page, third paragraph from the bottom, and the last sentence, the last line of the last sentence, it should be Brian Curry. The name it says Carney.
What date are you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were on November 12th.
No, 10th.
We're on the 10th.
Oh, my apologies.
Okay,
I'm off. No wonder.
okay. All right.
Any changes on the November 10th minutes? All right,
Motion to approve. Second.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Guys have it, November 12th.
That's the
Yeah, we corrected that.
All right,
Yeah.
third paragraph down
third part from the bottom.
from the bottom.
Last line of that paragraph should be Brian Curry instead of Brian Carney.
That's C-U-R-R-I-E.
R-R-I-E.
I move with that correction.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Now we'll move on to the regular minutes of November 16th.
The executive session,
But first, the regular meeting.
regular.
Any corrections on the November 16th regular session minutes?
We don't have
I don't,
a, we
you
don't have
don't.
anything from the
no, I don't
16th.
have.
Okay.
Sunday, 12th.
We'll hold off on that till next week. I think it's just in my packet for today. So we'll hold off on the 16th minutes until next week. All right. Next is now we're on the summary of actions. A license to approve the application for change of ownership. This is the KMS Cafe LLC doing business as Municus Cafe. Do we have anyone from the applicant here for the change of ownership? Any questions from the board on this?
No,
Transfer?
then that this is a big change. I don't know what
Appears to be in order.
this,
This is going to Karen Souza.
And just to congratulate Karen, she's worked there for a long time. This should be a great addition.
I move approval.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None of the ayes have it. Okay, next is the vote of fee request for the West Falmouth septic demo. This is for the filing fee. I'm sorry, I keep skipping things.
Yep.
We have the final betterment documents for Elizabeth Jean Drive. And just to be aware, the projected construction costs were $217,596.28 is what was projected. We were able to, and that was with all the bad things we were expecting could very well happen. The actual construction cost was $83,126.09. There were 9 properties that were assessed, and the betterment assessment per property is $3,778.46.
Move approval?
Second?
Motion and a second. Any further discussion on this betterment document? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, the ayes have it. And that takes care of that. It's a long process in getting this going, and finalizing that betterment for Elizabeth Jean Drive. All right. Next is a request for a fee waiver. This is for the West Falmouth septic demo. Waiver of the request of the $25 filing fee. This was a filing fee that was instituted after the submission and the funding for the grant. To remind you that these were grants that were given to some properties in the West Falmouth area, given an incentive payment of $10,000 for a project that very well may cost between $15,000 and $25,000 to voluntarily install innovative alternative septic systems.
I move approval.
Any comment on that?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Finner, I just want to see if there's comment from the board first, and then I'll... Sorry.
I would just say that, I think this is the least we can do to encourage this kind of really, I guess you call it trial project, to see how well the innovative systems actually work and function. So we're going to learn from these folks that are willing to actually pay a little bit extra to put in a septic system that will benefit us because we'll find out from their experience.
Yeah, and I want to just add, this is really voluntary on their part, that they're willing to take this on and have these septic demo projects on their property. So I think that's what precipitated the request to us that we waive the filing fee because of the willingness of the property owners to help us in terms of assessing some of the newest alternatives, which is what this is. This is not, your everyday septic system. It's a change and it's a modification of what some of the alternatives are.
And just to add to what Sam and Mary Pat have said, this is something that's not being required. These people stepped up, and the information that's obtained from this project is going to obviously benefit Falmouth and be used in Falmouth going forward, but also Cape-wide in terms of water quality management. The entire Cape is working together to assess what's cost effective, what works best in what situation. And these people have volunteered to participate in that, so I am also in favor.
Well, I'll be the naysayer. I'm concerned how this actually falls into our policy of what fees we can waive. And I don't see under our policy that we actually have set ourselves up to be able to waive the policy because it doesn't fit any of the descriptions as to why we can. And the other thing is, it is a $25 charge when they're going to be spending $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 to do this. And I'm a little bit concerned about opening the doors to when we start waiving fees like these. We sort of have a policy that generally has to do with nonprofits. We waive policies for that, but this is for private homeowners, and I'm a little bit concerned about that.
The only comment I would make is that our fee waiver policy has more to do with events.
Well, that's
and
number
with-
two. The first one's the general fee waiver policy, and number two category is the special events.
True. But what I'm saying is it has more to do with events than what this is about. And it certainly does fit within the policy. But it's not the usual type of request that we would have for a fee waiver. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we can't consider it.
Sam?
Well, now that you pointed it out, I see your point, and I'm not sure that we shouldn't consider tabling this and bringing it back after we take a closer look at just how the policy is written and whether this falls into it. Because I think you're right. It's sort of a token thank you, $25, because the contributions they're making are many-fold greater. Heather, thanks.
Not to advocate either way, but I just note under fee waivers, it does say municipal projects. It depends on whether you view this a municipal project in the town. Town projects in which procurement and solicitation documents clearly indicate that the public bidding process prior to opening of the price proposals, that fees shall be waived. So you could have a requirement to each homeowner that they notify that the fees will not be charged.
Mr. Finneran?
Mark Finneran, Precinct 6. I'm not against this at all, and the fee waiver or any of it, but I just want to point out the inequity with the $5,000 for the Little Pond sewer area, and the enticement in West Falmouth is $10,000, twice as much. And you're talking about people investing the same amount of money, so there just is an inequity there that I wanted to point out.
Okay, thank you. I think it is on our agenda to revisit our fee policy for both for waivers and the use of town property. So there's been a suggestion that we table this until we revisit that, and I don't think there's a...
Do we want to table it, or do we want to continue it to another meeting? I mean, if we table it, that's in limbo. But if we continue it to another night or another week,
Okay.
I mean, if we table it, it will never come back. Normally, if you table, you bring it back at the same meeting. You don't table it to another meeting. You either table it to take it up later in the evening, and if you really be strict about Robert's rules, which we're not. But, so, do we want to table it?
I'd entertain a
Do we want
motion to continue
it?
this until our December meeting, which I hope will also have the discussion of the fee policy.
I would make that motion.
And I can't remember whether Mr. Suso and I scheduled that for the first meeting in December or the second meeting in December, but the meeting in December in which we have that policy will then bring this back.
Second.
The motion is second to continue to a time indefinite, but in our December meeting at that time. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. We will continue that until our December meeting. All right. We will now move on to our fiscal year 2016 tax allocation and classification hearing. Ms. Petit, are you running this one? And Ms. Favuli?
Good evening, yes, me and Mrs. Favuli. This is our yearly tax classification hearing. It's the final step in the budget setting process. So we've taken the last 3 town meetings, submitting them to DOR in order to set the tax rate. We're looking right now at a tax rate of $8.37 per thousand. There was some documentation in your packet regarding the vote that the assessors have made and would recommend that the board take, and we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Before we start with the questions, I do need to read into the record a notification of hearing. In accordance with the requirements of Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56, the Falmouth Board of Selectmen will hold a fiscal 2016 property tax classification hearing Monday, November 23rd, 2015, at 7:15 p.m. in the Selectmen's Meeting Room of the Town Hall, 59 Town Hall Square, Falmouth, Mass. The purpose of the public hearing is to consider the percentage of the fiscal year 2016 tax levy to be borne by each class of taxable real and personal property. All persons interested in the determination may appear and be heard at the time and place stated above.
Thank you. Really what the board is being asked to do tonight is recommend a single tax rate, which is a factor of 1.
I just might add that we've done this year after year after year and considered whether or not we should split the residential and commercial, which would increase the taxes for businesses in town and reduce the taxes for residents. But we have never gone in that direction, and I think it takes a lot of homework and a lot of preparation if we want to go that way. But I don't think that the selectmen have ever decided to move in that direction. So I would make a motion that we approve the factor of 1 coming year.
I'm going to second, and I have a comment.
Whatever.
Okay,
Is
we
there a
first have
motion?
discussion, because we're going to close the hearing and do all that.
Oh, okay.
Comment.
Comment?
I think it's important that we do vote 1 because we want to continue to attract businesses to town. And if we raise the tax rate, that would be a deterring factor. Particularly the EDIC works very hard in trying to attract businesses to town. And I think that we still have some work to do in that regard. And that having, the tax rate be lower than some other communities is one thing that makes Falmouth attractive, and so I would be for keeping it the way it is.
Just a comment. I think, my recollection is the only town on the Cape that has a split rate is the town of Barnstable. Is that correct? None of the other towns have ever
At
adopted
this
that.
time, they've all declined it because there's such a large difference. We would be going for residential for $8 and the commercial industrial will be over $12. That's a large difference, especially for some of the smaller businesses in town.
And I think too, in a certain sense, there's probably a lot more business and industry in Barnstable than there is here. And I think we have a very strong business and commercial base here, even though it is not gigantic. It is certainly thriving. And I think we would not want to do anything to make that more difficult, I think, for our local businesses.
Ms. Muffin?
I think I always look for the, what the Board of Assessors are saying, and that they would recommend that we vote for the factor of 1. So the recommendation, I always go through, and then I kind of follow up with that.
Mr. Patterson?
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that in this community, the commercial are mostly individual business owners and not large businesses or corporations that have franchises in Falmouth. And if you actually look at what would happen if you actually created a factor greater than 1, we wouldn't raise that much more revenue to offset what the residential property owners are paying anyway. So it seems to me we need to continue to support our small business owners because they represent the bulk of our commercial sector, if you will. And we can do that by just keeping this factor at 1. I think it's, as Sue has mentioned, it's important to encourage business development for new people looking at Falmouth, but also to encourage our own small businesses to continue to thrive as well.
Ms. Muffin?
Do we know if our small businesses actually own the property where they have their business, or do you think they're renting? Because this,
it's
do
a
we
mix.
know that?
We have a large percentage that do own their own businesses.
They own the building?
They own the building. The smaller businesses, there's probably about 400 smaller businesses with less than 10 employees. Those tend to rent.
Okay.
I think the number to also point out is that the commercial is only about 5% of the valuation of the town. In a town that had that more split between 50-50, I would think it might make more sense, but when we're really shifting that burden fairly heavily onto the small businesses is where I would be pushing also. Yep.
And just one last thing, I don't want to get away from the main point, which is that Falmouth's mill rate continues to be one of the lowest on the Cape. And the reason that is because we work so hard at not overspending. Both of your departments, as townwide departments, work very hard at living within their budget because there's a parallel to the way most of the folks in town try to work within their budget. And I just think that's something that should be recognized as a very big challenge, very difficult to do. Most of the Cape towns are not as adept at it as we are, and it takes some willingness for sacrifices. It takes a lot of juggling, and that's appreciated.
I just wanted to make another comment too, is that most of our taxable property, or should I say high tax property, is on the shoreline. And Falmouth has the greatest amount of coastline of any town in the Commonwealth. So when you think about all the property that is on the shore and how much they are taxed because of they're on the water, it is a huge benefit to the town. So that people who live in the middle are really have the benefit of that because their taxes are considerably lower. That's why when we talk with the planning board about coastal resiliency, how incredibly important it is to us, because that's where our tax base is. And if we were ever, through storms or sea level rise or whatever, lose property on our shoreline, it would have a huge financial impact on the community. So I think that's something to keep in mind.
This being a public hearing, is there any public comment on this? Mr. Fittering?
Mark Finneran, Precinct 6. Just in the for complete information, another great part of the reason that our taxes are so low is we have so many vacation properties, or properties that aren't occupied year-round. These people don't use our services, such as the schools and everything. I think we have, only Dennis has more property of that variety than we do, so that is a great part of it. Thanks.
Thank you.
We
Any
do
other?
have about 7,000 second homeowners, and if we did do a split, their personal property tax bill would also be increased, so they would be getting a higher tax bill on that end too, so that's something else to consider.
I think we had a conversation about that a few years back, because Nantucket had that residential exemption.
Correct.
And actually, I think this is before some of you were on the board, but we had a conversation with you about it, and we knew it was very complicated, and we were not ready to move forward on a residential exemption at all.
No.
And we're a totally different community.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you're just shifting that tax burden
That shifts the
to
burden.
the second home with their personal property
Right.
tax, which is already an additional tax that they're paying.
Any other discussion? No other comments or questions? I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to close the hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. The hearing is closed.
You just need to make the vote.
Right.
Yes,
Before
I
you
move
sign.
that the town of Falmouth continues to tax all classes at the same rate by adopting a factor of 1 and to reject the residential, commercial, and open space exemption.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. The ayes have it. And I believe you have some forms for us to sign.
All signed, and that was submitted in the morning.
Today's the 23rd. That's my comment. Okay, so our next item is to discuss the request for a fee waiver. This is for the Falmouth Firefighters Local 1397, the Homeless for the Holidays fundraiser and toy drive. This is for their tent permit fee.
I think we may want to continue this till we have a fuller discussion on fees as well.
Okay, my only concern about that, this is an event that's happening on
December 9th.
December 9th.
Ah.
We could tell them to not pay the fee until we get back to them, but
Yeah, if that's allowed, that's what I would be in favor of. They're not going anywhere.
and
What have we done in the past? And I-
We have waived the fee.
Yeah.
Usually for nonprofits, we have, and for our own departments, when they're doing events that really, they're charitable in nature, and they really benefit the community, we have waived the fee.
I did feel that this one was covered under the second part of our fee waiver of the special events. It does give the town manager, as long as we know that the money that they're bringing in does go out to them. I'm not sure we need to necessarily have the full documentation that shows that, because they have been doing it for so many years. So,
I move that we waive the fee for the homeless for the holidays event.
Second?
a motion and a second to waive the $50 permit fee. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None. The ayes have it. Yep.
Just a quick comment. These do require prior approval by the Board of Selectmen. Once this has been waived, if they come back next year for the same event under the same circumstances, the town manager can waive that fee.
All right, next item is a new application. This is one that was continued from last week, having to do with, or 2 weeks ago, with the beach wedding permit, Old Silver Beach. This is for Saturday, August 13th, 2016. We have heard from Mr. Hoffer that the date of the 13th is fine, and that the confusion of the date was not an issue for him. Are there any questions? We have Mr. Hoffer here if we want to ask any questions on that, or Ms. Moffett?
Is Mr. Hoffer going to come up?
He is.
Good evening. I'm still back to my same view that I had when we talked about this before because of that date in August. And the fact that you think this will go without any problem to anyone who is at the beach on that Saturday at 6:30. So in your experience, when you see this happen, there really aren't any problems. There's no conflicts. And,
It would depend on the time of the day.
well, this one's,
There's about, we have about 300 spaces there, and I think they said they were going to have 30. Is that the?
30.
Yep.
Well,
30 cars.
30 cars,
We can
yes.
accommodate that. And there's no impact as far as the road, is the road race set?
No, it's later in the month.
Okay, there's no impact there. The only thing is the bathrooms will be closed at that time of the day. And we usually have them do the public side also as opposed to the resident.
So in your experience, you don't see that this creates a problem in the middle of August to have a wedding there?
No.
Okay.
We have a lot of those weddings
Okay.
in August.
All right.
And some beaches are tougher than others. It's really the parking is the critical thing.
Okay.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Thank you.
Motion is second for approval. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Sorry
None, the
about
ayes
the
have it.
confusion last time.
That's all right, thanks, Don.
All right. Next item is a presentation from Maggie Downey, the Compact Administrator from Cape Light Compact. Maggie, welcome back.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. My name is Maggie Downey, as you said, for the Administrator of the Cape Light Compact. I have handouts, copies of the presentation. I'm not sure, are they in your packet? Okay.
Yep.
And then I was out there some extras for the board, for the audience. So again, thank you very much for having me this evening before our holidays. Okay, Heather, you told me this way? Hi. So I'm here tonight to talk about two things, to give an update on the Cape Light Compact's 2016-2018 Energy Efficiency Plan and the enhanced offerings and opportunities that the Cape Light Compact Governing Board has been discussing for the past 7 months or so, and also to tee up a new topic, grid modernization or smart grids. That's how I'm going to end the presentation, just to introduce you to a topic that is going to be, you're going to be hearing a lot about in the next coming years, and you're already hearing about it, I'm sure. But I do want to thank you for your time tonight, and for most importantly, we have had some great board members represent the town of Falmouth, and I want to thank you very much for your appointments. Ron Zweig is your current board member, and he is very active, and we're very grateful. It takes a lot to go from Falmouth to Barnstable, sometimes more than once a month for very long meetings, so as staff and as administrator, I'm very appreciative of his time. So for the audience and for those of you who don't remember, the Cape Light Compact basically is the sum of all of the parts, all of the towns. As a result of the 1997 Electric Restructuring Act, which changed the way we look at our investor-owned utilities, the 15 towns on the Cape and the 6 towns on the Vineyard and 2 counties joined together under Massachusetts Restructuring Act to become a municipal aggregator. And so what is a municipal aggregator? A municipal aggregator under Massachusetts laws does several things. First, we are authorized to administer the energy efficiency programs instead of the investor-owned utilities. So the Cape Light Compact, or the towns acting together run the energy efficiency programs locally. We work to make sure that all of the monies that are collected from ratepayers, everybody who pays an electric bill pays into this fund, are kept on the Cape and Vineyard and reinvested on the Cape and Vineyard. The second is we advocate for consumers, mostly in regulatory proceedings, which I'm going to talk about a little, as I said, in smart grids. And then the third is we offer customers a choice in their competitive power supply. So we have a green power option. We have the longest running green power program for those who choose to support renewable energy, but we also have a basic service product for customers. We've been a model for municipal aggregators throughout Massachusetts. For many years, there was no one but the Cape Light Compact. Most recently, there have been approximately 50 other cities and towns who have been approved or are in the process of becoming municipal aggregators. And most recently, it's Marion all the way down to Fall River. All of the southeast coast towns have just become approved this past month in October as municipal aggregators. So I'm looking forward to connecting with them going forward to see if there's any synergies or advantages we can make by leveraging our collective buying power, so to speak. And we've also nationally, people have modeled in California and Ohio, as well as Illinois. They've looked to the towns on the Cape and Vineyard to see what we've done in this area. And the last thing I just want to do, a couple of weeks ago, I sent on behalf of our chairman, Joyce Flynn, a note. Our DPU had recently approved the amendments to our aggregation plan, and we sent that out and informed you. We also are just approved the sixth amendment to the Compact's intergovernmental agreement, and basically 90% of that was taking what we said in the aggregation plan and putting it into the intergovernmental agreement and making those changes consistent with the direction of the Department of Public Utilities. Just want to give some background on energy efficiency, and I put the language right out of the Massachusetts statute from the Green Communities Act, which passed in 2008. Because prior to the passage of the Green Communities Act, we had a very small energy efficiency program, approximately $5 million. It was funded on your electric bill. But once the Green Communities Act passed, the legislature mandated that we pursue all electric and natural resource needs shall first be met through all available energy efficiency and demand reduction resources that are cost effective or less expensive in supply. That meant two things. It gave us a mandate that we have to pursue rather than building new power plants, transmission lines, or distribution systems to meet growing electric needs, so KWH, we were to pursue energy efficiency and demand reduction programs. And that made a big difference. It took very small programs. Our budgets were $5 million a year, and they are now about $36 million annually. And these are funds that are paid by all of us. Every business and resident on the Cape and Vineyard pays into these funds, and we manage them. We're your stewards. We design the programs to represent the needs of the community and serve what our energy efficiency is. But we're also, the key here is, if it wasn't the Cape Light Compact or the towns running these programs, these programs and the size of the programs would also be run by the private sector. So there isn't well, if you weren't here, what would happen? We have a mandate to make sure that we are serving and meeting need. And in fact, statistically, we've been managed, even though our customer count has grown over the last 10 years, we've managed to keep actually our consumption flat over that 10-year period, which is quite a challenge, and I believe that's through the success of the energy efficiency programs. So we work collaboratively with 7 other privately owned program administrators. That's the terminology that we are called. The big thing that the Green Communities Act required are 3-year plans. Prior to 2008, we filed an annual plan. So right now, we had just filed our 3rd 3-year plan. We're finishing our the 3rd year of our second 3-year plan. And what is also different as a result of the Green Communities Act are these energy efficiency plans are fully adjudicated. Basically what that means is we filed the plan on October 30th, and the DPU has 90 days to approve them. So during that period, the Attorney General's Office, the Division of Energy Resources, the Department of Public Utilities, and other stakeholders will evaluate the plan. They will ask us information requests. They will go through the budgets. They will look at everything down to the cost effectiveness of installing light bulbs and insulation measures, and they'll evaluate. And ultimately, at the end of the 90 days, they will look at everything we're going to tell you that we included, and they will make a determination to approve as submitted or to amend the energy efficiency plan for the Cape and the Vineyard. So we have been holding community outreach forums since May. The governing board worked on the plan from March through May. And then we have been holding very small community outreach forums to find out from our businesses. So we've met with chambers, we've met with community groups, civic associations, to find out what's working. Have you had an energy audit? If it did you like it? What worked? What didn't work? How could we improve it, and how could we change that? And that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about now. So just a quick overview of the programs. We have 3 programs, and these again are mandated by state law. We have a residential program, a low-income program, and a commercial and industrial program. So if you are a residential customer on the Cape or Vineyard, the funds that we collect every month on your electric bill fund these programs. So there's no cross-subsidization. All of the residential funds are reinvested into residential programs, and the C&I commercial and industrial programs stay with commercial businesses. The one exception is low income, where we're mandated by statute to take total of 10% of the total funds and put them aside to specifically target our low-income customers. So this is one of my favorite slides. It's actually it's a brochure, and it changes every year. I put this in here because it really shows, I like the house, and it also shows you a comprehensive view of what happens and what we look at when we come into your home for an energy efficiency audit. So we will look at everything from number 1, you can see it's simply a chimney balloon. So if you have a fireplace that isn't used, as part of the audit, they'll install a chimney balloon, which keeps the heat in the winter, or if you cool in the summer, we'll also keep it cool. We'll look at everything from the air insulation levels in your attic, in your basement, in the walls, air sealing where needed, as well as appliances and heating systems. So this is on our website. It also lists the amount of the rebates that you get for each of the different measures when we come out and look at your home. The goal of the program is to look at the house comprehensively and to identify as many things and as many measures that we can do to make sure that you're more comfortable in your home and that we're able to lower your kWh consumption, which leads to ultimately lower electric bills. Also, we have a new construction program for anyone who's building a new home, and as well as a multifamily program, and then programs for lighting and products where we buy down. So most of our retailers, Aubuchon, True Value, and the big box stores participate in these programs. So if you go in there, we brought down the cost of the lighting products. So what did the Cape Light Compact Governing Board decide to do, and what does the plan include? So the first is, again, a home energy services, or HES, an energy audit, is where you call the 800 number and you schedule an audit to have a technician to come out and look at your home. So statewide, they have different incentives. The compacts proposed in our plan to fund up to $4,000, or 75% up to $4,000 is what a resident would pay for air sealing and insulation. Statewide, they only pay up to $2,000. And the reason why the compact has a higher incentive is because what we found when we looked at the data and went back over time is that the average cost of an insulation job on the Cape and Vineyard was more than $2,000. So customers had to call multiple years and schedule it out over time in order to complete the job. So we looked back statistically, what the value was is approximately around $3,800, so we set the cap at $4,000. We also found that year-round renters who are responsible for their electric bill were not able to engage the landlord who owned the property because they weren't paying the electric bill. So that was a barrier that we identified, and if you rent your home and pay the electric bill, you could be eligible for, actually that's a typo, it should say up to 100%, up to $4,000, whereas statewide it's 75% up to $2,000. The compact has had this program for renters for the last 5 years. Statewide, they're just introducing it in the next 3-year plan. So again, the governing board has had some cutting-edge programs that are now being adopted throughout the state of Massachusetts, albeit again at a lower incentive, but we also have a program for 61 to 80% of the state median income. Again, this was a target population that we found was hard to reach and hard to serve. That extra amount of not having to come up with the copay was a barrier, and we couldn't get them to adopt the measures. So through, again, statistical surveys and other analysis, we brought back to the board a recommendation that customers between 61 and 80% of the state median income be entitled to have no copay and up to $4,000 worth of incentives, as well as municipal government-owned homes and properties are served at 100%. We also serve customers with natural gas heated homes who have a preference to be served by the Cape Light Compact. We also serve homes that heat with oil, wood, and propane, and that's a big issue for the Vineyard, that their primary source of heating their homes is either electric, oil, or propane, as well as the Outer Cape. Also, on two other things that the board recently approved on their enhanced residential program. One is to maintain the heat loan at a 0% interest rate for eligible energy efficiency measures. Is everyone familiar with the heat loan? Anyone had it, applied for a heat loan? So let me just very quickly go down a rabbit hole on that. So what is a heat loan? A heat loan is after you've had an energy audit, if they've identified measures that are significant, then it could be anything from you have your heating systems failing. So to upgrade your heating system or to switch your heating system, you have single pane windows, or you have no insulation in your home, and it could be a $10,000 insulation job. What we do is we take the energy efficiency funds and buy down the interest rate. So homeowners are eligible for a 0% up to 7-year loan for up to $25,000 to pay for the improvements that have been identified through the audit. And the board others were discussing whether or not it should be a sliding scale based on income. And the governing board opted to keep it at a 0% interest rate. They are also including some demonstration programs we're going to be trying over the next 3 years to try and reduce peak usage during the peak summer days to get to load shift for cost savings in your electric bill. And on the multifamily side, a multifamily unit is anything with 5 units or more. These are mostly Cape Vineyard condominium complexes that have 5 units. Right now, we're not authorized, if those 5 units plus are heated with oil or propane, to offer insulation or air sealing, where you can do it if it's heated with electric or gas, but not oil and propane. So we're asking the Department of Public Utilities for permission to include oil and propane heated multifamily units. And we also have enhanced benefits for increased participation at a multifamily site. Again, we want to treat the complex in its entirety. So if there are 5 units, if we can get all 5 to participate, there's a higher incentive. On the low-income residential offering, so here I have 2 things. That's the state median income is listed on the right. But most importantly, unlike elsewhere in the state, we don't require, in order for a customer to be served through the low-income program, to be on fuel assistance or on the electric discount rate. Simple documentation sent to the office of your income amounts will enable us to serve you at this level. So again, we were listening to what customers said about having to they don't want to be on so many programs, too many barriers to provide evidence of what their income was. So we to simplify the process for participation in the low-income programs. So you should recognize this. This is about your Falmouth Ice Rink, one of the key commercial projects that we've done, and we're partnered with on the lighting, the motors, as well as the installation of the building. I put this up because as I talk about commercial and industrial accounts, because it really gives you an overview of who we are. Cape and Vineyard wide, we have more than 17,000 small commercial accounts. And these accounts use about 1/3 of the electricity, whereas the other 70% is made up by approximately 1,200 accounts. So our target and our hard to reach, hard to serve in the next 3-year plan are the 17,000 small accounts. Many of them are seasonal, and when they're open and we can get into them, that's their busiest time. That's when they're making the most amount of money, and they have the least interest in having anyone involved in their business other than them running their business. So we've made a few changes based on some of the feedback we received from our commercial customers. And first and foremost is we've streamlined this program for our small commercial customers. We're offering an increased incentive, but we're also offering something as instant savings measures. So right now, if we came out, we would come out for an audit. Then we would have to come back. We might have to come back for the lighting, and we might have to come back for the installation. So that's 3 trips into your business. So starting in 2016, the vendor that we will select competitively will be stocked with instant measures. So they'll be able to do the lighting, the smart strips, any plug load, anything that can be done at the time of the first visit will be done then, and then a future schedule for more complicated and advanced measures. We will still do custom and prescriptive rebate applications. These will not require rebates, so the process of having to fill out a lot of forms will be eliminated through that first audit. For medium businesses, we're going to be focusing on sectors. And again, those are about the 1,200 customer accounts. So maybe in a sector, there are vendors who specialize in serving grocery. And what they do is when they go out and serve a grocery, whether it's a small Cumberland Farms or your Super Stop and Shop, they know exactly what's needed. They know the VFDs, they're looking at lighting, they're looking at refrigeration, and when they come out, they bring all of the technology and the technicians with them to serve that sector, a grocery sector. So the board picked 3: lodging, grocery, and healthcare. And on the lodging side, the focus will be particularly on our small lodging. We have a plethora of B&Bs and inns, and that's going to be our target. We'll be sending out vendors who know how to work with that industry and what their needs are and how to maximize the savings there. For large businesses, we will be dedicating one of our staff. So this, the next 3-year plan has no staff increases. I'm rearranging and assigning staff. So staff will be working specifically with those about 100 customers to work on memorandums of understandings. Because when you're working with a large customer, it would be a Falmouth hospital or your Woods Hole complex. Those are long-term discussions and dialogues, and the planning for any energy efficiency measures can cross multi-years. So it's also a capital campaign. Some of our large towns are in the same boat. You want to begin and partner and work long-term to develop a plan that meets the customer's need. Municipalities have 7% of our total C&I customers where the board elected to continue offering up to 100% incentive for all cost-effective measures. And then new for the next 3-year plan is the board is going to be proposing for nonprofits who meet the criteria, which are still evolving, but basically they have to be a designated registered 501c3, have been in business for more than 5 years, and have limits on 2 different types of operating income, that these nonprofits would be served at 100% level. We're going to try to do 100 projects a year. It's a limited budget. It'll be a first come, first serve. But again, the feedback is we have everything from small theaters to nonprofits who are operating out of what used to be a home, and they really, to reinvest in maintaining their business is just, when they're trying to serve their constituency, was too much. So again, this is something that the board will be trying to see and evaluating as we move forward. So I talked about calendar events, and again, I'm here just to give you an update and tell you where we are. April 30th, we filed and developed a draft plan. We spent May through September soliciting feedback and input from small consumer groups and finding out what worked, what they didn't like, how could we change. We filed the second draft of the plan with the state in September. And I have 3 more presentations to my 21 select boards of selectmen, and I'll be done. It's actually 23 when I include the counties. And then, as I said, we filed October 30th with the Department of Public Utilities, and we are in the middle of their review of the plan. So, any comments or questions, or should I move on to grid mod?
You're going to move on to the grid?
Yeah. All right, thank you. So again, this is just meant to be an introduction to a subject that I will be back, and hopefully we will be engaging in. So on your left you have Nikola Tesla, on your right you have Elon Musk, and in between hundreds of years and not a whole lot of change in the investor-owned utilities and the electric industry. And what you're seeing in grid mod and smart grid is a lot of changes, but the changes are coming from the outside. They're coming from entrepreneurial pressures being put on, so rather than the utilities driving it, which is historically what has happened, you're seeing the outside driving change within. And so when you talk about smart grids and grid mod, what are you talking about? It's basically the use of remote data. It's all about information. It's about data collection and the way power flows. And this slide actually talks about that. So we're talking about, on your left you have what the grid looks like now. You have a large power plant, transmission lines, distribution systems, a very one-way, energy flows this way. What a smart grid is two-way flows, and we're talking about microgrids and even nanogrids, where you have just energy being produced locally and isolated in different nodes, so that if you have a blackout in this scenario, you basically lose the whole grid. What the utilities are looking at is how do you, if you get a blackout here, nothing else goes down, so that they're able to isolate where the outages are, fix them, and respond to them faster. And you're also better able to integrate distributed energy renewable sources. So if you have PV panels on your landfill, you're able to, or at the airport, you're able to utilize storage to make that a mini microgrid in downtown Hyannis, so that when there are issues, they're feeding that grid separately. So they're actually what is a microgrid, and that even can be down further to a nanogrid, which would be a neighborhood. Sounds a little far out sometimes, but it's not. And these things are being demonstrated all over the country and all over different parts of the world as well. So why is Cape Lake Compact involved, and how did it get brought to our attention? It got brought to our attention because the Department of Public Utilities asked the distribution companies to submit grid modernization plans, which they did. They filed them on August 5th. They had 4 tasks. One, these plans should reduce the effect of outages. They should optimize demand. And what I mean by right here, this is the system peak for the ISO New England states. And we have to build our entire electric grid to meet that instantaneous peak. So for us, it's the hot summer day where everything's on. The rest of the year, there's a lot of infrastructure that goes unused. So they're trying to flatten that peak, which will lead to lower electric costs. As well as integrating, I talked about distributed energy resources, and then improving mobile workforce and asset management. The ability to get the trucks out on the road on time more efficiently will lead to savings. So we have 2 approaches. So our big utilities filed 2 plans, and they're very different. And we're not sure what we want. We're not sure what the community wants. You have Eversource is focusing on a lot of grid-facing technologies. And what does that mean? A database, computer systems, substation improvements. They have a very strong emphasis on reliability. They're not convinced that residential small business customers are going to benefit from some of the time of use metering and the advanced metering. And most of their load comes from a very few customers, because their territory services the 128 area, the Boston area. So, and their plan is the least expensive of the 2 plans. I think we have several $100 million versus a $1 billion plan by National Grid. National Grid wants to be the utility of the future. They want to take smart meters and time of use meters, which is what they rolled out in Worcester, and make that a requirement. They want to explore batteries and storage. And it's not that these plans are very different. They're cost different. What they offer will be different. And what the Cape Lake Compact is trying to do is to have a dialogue to figure out what is it that we want to see offered on the Cape and Vineyard. Because we will pay as ratepayers for these plans. These will all be rate-based, and we'll pay for them. And we're trying to put together communities and other stakeholders to find out, and whether it will be through public forums, just introducing the topic to selectmen to figure out what do we want to see available and what do we want to pay for. Because this is a decision not only for us, our children, but our children's children, because you're basically setting the stage for the next 50 years on what our electric grid is going to look like. So we've communicated to Eversource. They know we're very interested in this topic. They also know that we don't have a plan. We're not saying that this is bad or this is good, but that we want a dialogue. And we want a dialogue from grassroots up to find out what residents and businesses want. And we, as I talked about, we're hoping to collaborate with other stakeholders. I've met with the Tech Council, Cape Cod Commission, meeting with all of the selectmen, and from there we're trying to figure out how do we move this forward, because it's moving, and we don't want to be sitting on the sidelines. We at least want the opportunity to say, we don't like that, we like this, or we're okay. And that conversation can't come from the Cape Lake Compact. It has to come from others. So that's it.
Joanne?
Where is the discussion on burying the utilities, especially when, we're subject to a lot of outages that has cost for the consumer, for the business. It has emergency cost as towns, cost to the town. And it's something, particularly our population being higher toward the elderly, there can be some health risks. And it seems that the utilities are more focused on administrative things. What about things that will directly benefit the consumer?
The place to put that would be in the grid mod plan. And the question, because they do have other things. I know there's some things we were looking, like there were some tree trimming, some other things that were in grid mod, but that's basically rebuilding substations, modernizing substations. So if that was something that was, again, the Cape and Vineyard communities want, this would be the docket in which to raise it. So, and there has to be cost-benefit analysis, because ultimately, you know, we are going to pay for everything, or it would be something where you'd have, if it was just, say this was just Eversource's territory, so much bigger than ours, if it was just the Cape and Vineyard that wanted something like that, could it be just paid for by the Cape and Vineyard customers? But the grid modern plan and that docket would be the place to raise it.
Ms. Moffett?
Yesterday, there was a conversation in Falmouth concerning passive homes when they're building their homes, and as I don't see where it fits in, but everything that I heard about when they built their home, and then it's all electrical and it's all clean air, and there is an excess of electricity that they have, and they sell that, and then they build up a certain amount of money, and then they received bonuses for having these. Now, there's 2 that I know of here in Falmouth, but I don't see where this fits in with that idea of talking to people and saying, would you consider even changing your current home to being a passive home? But I'm just looking at it, and
it fits in this model, because what smart homes or homes of the future are, and again, now we're incorporating things such as storage, and using your cars to charge, and using your cars to discharge,
right.
So that's the technology that's being developed, and is it ready now? Is it ready to be rolled out? It's not ready. I would say it's not ready for prime time, but yet we're designing for that. So what you would have in place for that are tariffs. The ability to, we have a net metering tariff now. I think that's what you're talking about. We get a credit for any excess energy. So designing this type of system is, again, all about smart grids.
Okay. It's most impressive to listen to the families that have built these homes in Falmouth.
We just funded, we partnered with Habitat for Humanity in the town of Barnstable, and we did 3 houses in a laugh on Sesame Street. And they are exactly what you just said. They're Habitat for Humanity houses, and we pre-purchased the renewable energy certificates. And by doing that, they were able to get another cash match to put on solar. So they basically we just created three, sounds so small when we've got tens of thousands of homes, but we just did the very same thing. And then we keep those RECs locally for us. But that's exactly what the technology that we're looking at is. We're already there. But there are some things that are not there. Storage isn't there, but your cars are there.
Yeah.
So you'll be seeing, we're proposing, and some of the other PAs are proposing, battery storage for cars, hybrid plug-in cars. So it's going to be here sooner than you realize.
And just another, why are the appliances that would use any type of solar, why are they so expensive? I mean, I think that if I thought about whether it's the refrigerator or the washing machine or whatever, why does that cost so much for the water heater?
Like everything, it's a demand, and the technologies, if you think about what PV cost 5 years ago versus what it comes down. So technology continues to evolve, and it's demand. So that it's just market driven.
It's just market driven. Okay.
Mr. Patterson?
Yes, I attended the Cape Cod Commission's regional policy plan meeting last week. It's being located at different places, but offered for stakeholders to come and contribute to the process. It's a 20-year kind of projection, and certainly energy was a key component of their considerations in trying to plan for the future and set policies will hopefully drive, how we develop and what we develop. It's the first time I've heard of microgrids coming up, and that was a new one for me. Can you give us a little bit more information on where that fits into trying to minimizing the impact of brownouts and blackouts?
Yep, and actually we're meeting next week with the staff, Cape Cod Commission, and Paul Ninswicki, the executive director, to talk about exactly this, not only the energy policy, the energy section of the policy plan, but also this bigger conversation. So to me, like the most logical one is the airport. So you have an airport that has about I think it's 3 megawatts of solar all over there. You have several businesses that have solar installed on rooftops already, in addition, privately owned. And you also have a big load center right there. So a microgrid is the ability to, it has to incorporate storage, is the ability to utilize the load. You've got a load center and you've got a generator right there. And rather than it having to go out into the grid, it stays local. So it requires upgrading smart substations, infrastructure rewiring. So and it is an investment of infrastructure by the utilities in partnership with the businesses and the private sector there. And could it include the hospital? Because it's in that, so that if you've got storage, battery storage from solar, so that you've got, if the grid does go down, you've got the ability to keep that whole area network empowered. And I'm just actually attending an ACEEE meeting on microgrids. So, and because it is truly developing, and it's totally engineering, and I am not an engineer, but it's a really wonky. Engineers, like anyone who loves the science of this stuff, really like it. And I just actually got something in my email today. I haven't read it, on nanogrids, which are even smaller. So I'll forward I can forward it on to Heather. She can send it. It's from the American Public Power Association. And again, very cutting edge, all designed for to make sure our lights stay on, to keep us competitive worldwide, and for public safety. So, but it is coming. It's coming to us.
Okay.
Maggie, how flexible is the State Department of Public Utilities toward all of these innovations in terms of the grid, would you say?
Well, they're going to be tasked with balancing this against cost. And the case will have to be made, and again, you have your two utilities who've made very different cases of what it should happen. And again, the differences are 3 zeros. I mean, $1 billion versus 100 million. It's a lot of money, and it's going to be rate based. So it'll have to be, what type of feedback do we get from the communities? I like to believe that if the Cape and Vineyard community as a whole says this is what we want, this is how we want to see it paid, I think that we will have great success. But it will be measured against the cost-benefit analysis. They'll be required to look at the impact to ratepayers over what the overall impact of the plan is. They'll weigh environmental benefits as well. So we have a new Department of Public Utilities with the new governor's administration. And this is the first time I've been before them so I don't know how, but they will deal with all of these things. And that's why I think it's really important for us as a community to make a decision on what we want to do on this subject matter, even if it's to say no action. No action's okay, but at least to have engaged and made some thoughtful decisions on it.
Okay, any questions? Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I left you
Thank you.
copies of our
Yes.
annual report. Thanks.
You want me to just pass those
Yes,
down?
thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Our next item is a report from the DPW Director, Ray Jack, on the Water and Wastewater Monthly Status Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've changed the presentation format and content this time since the last 2 times it went crazy and locked down, so hopefully it's not going to do it this time. I ran it through twice today, though. For Long Pond, construction amount originally was $40.9 million. We just had an adjusted contract value based on the first change order that got finalized. So it went down by about $911,000. But we're going to have another potential change order in the pipe right now for about $84,000, so it'll change again shortly. We're about 22% complete. We're missing only 2 more 8s on the amount that we paid them. It's 8888895. And the project's expected to be completed May of 17. For the cash flow, and I know this might be a little bit hard to follow, but because we're starting with change order adjustments, then I had to be able to adjust the cash flow charts. So the long blue line that you see, that's a straight line, that's the adjusted value down to show where it is. The lighter blue line that's kind of wavy, that's the original value. And their payment is down on the left-hand side where you see the red triangles. So that's what we've paid out so far. The number there is a little bit different than the number that you just saw of 88880. And that's just because this number represents an actual payment to the contractor with the retainage withheld. So the project is very much on target. Installed the raw water intakes, the picture up on the right-hand side there, showing one of the backhoes lifting up one of the 24-inch high-density polyethylene fused pipe intakes. It gets assembled on the surface, and then each end gets sealed so that it's capable of floating. You can see the orange barriers out there. Those are siltation barriers out in the pond. So then this is where the pipe is being floated out into the pond, and then there's like an alley that was cut through the woods where the directional drilling rig is located. It drills down to about 26 feet, I think it was, on the one intake, right out into the pond shelf. It comes out there. We send a diver down. They hook the pipe up to the end of that drill rig, and then they ream it and start pulling the pipe back. So 2 24-inch intakes went in that way, along with 2 3-inch airburst pipes. So the airburst pipes are for cleaning out the intakes periodically. 721 cubic yards of concrete. The weather's still good, so it's taking advantage of it. They continue the waterproofing, which is putting bentonite clay waterproofing on the exterior of the building for the most part now. The transformer has arrived. It was installed. The meter was installed, and it is hooked up and operational. Constructed the bypass trail. That's the trail that goes around the pond, so that we're going to have down near the pond construction that's going on for a fairly long period of time while we build the raw water intake building, so that this will enable everybody who uses the trail around the pond to be able to continue through the site. It's where we were in June, August, and the little piece on the left-hand side there is the front wall starting to materialize. What you see going across the picture was the pump chamber construction, and then that black mat that you see there, that's actually bentonite waterproofing. This is where we were in October. This is during a period when we had significant construction with concrete pours going on, so these are the concrete pump trucks. Early November, that was the white wall up front there is the north wall. And then down on the left-hand side of the photo, you can see the west wall starting to go in. The rebar that you see in the front is the DAF platform area. Then in late November, you can see the front wall is the light-colored white, and then the west wall has almost doubled in length. The concrete that you see in the back area here are the filter walls that have been constructed, and then in here is where the DAF walls are being built. This is just a sense of scale because the pictures don't really show you just how big this building actually is. So that's just a small piece of one of the filter walls going up. This is a basement shot. So this is taken from inside the structure. The white wall that you see on the front is the north-facing wall, and then the one on the left-hand side is the west wall that is currently going up. So all of this area where all of these tanks are being built is actually the basement area of the building. Now here, along the front, this is the pump chamber area. This area here is a slab, a mat slab, and then you can see the other mat slab over here. These are where the underground tanks are going to go. So this area here isn't the basement, this is the sub-basement level of the building that'll all get buried once it's done. And up top you can see the filter walls that were constructed. So this is the top of the basement, and then it'll go up again to to about this height when the second floor goes on. This is just a couple more shots of the intake drilling. So here it's showing these two 24-inch pipes that have been floated out there and they're waiting to get installed. And this was the one that you saw on the other slide where the backhoe is helping to lift it out. And that's what it'll look like in the future. I think for the next presentation, I'll probably take the same view or the same shot of actual construction, and then hopefully it won't be too long and we won't be able to use this anymore. You'll have the real building in place. For Little Pond, original construction is $20,418,000, went up by $17,000. We finalized several change orders into one change order that increased the value by about $17,000. This project too is 22% complete. $4.5 million have been paid. Potential change order coming up is $280,000 or thereabouts, and that is for the work that is going to occur on Spring Bars Road and Randolph. There is presently a 2-inch galvanized water main and an AC water main that comes from Mara Vista down to where the mall is. And in order to get the sewer mains in that area, there's a conflict with the water main. There's not enough room. So we're going to be able to get the sewer main in by replacing the water main. So this is actually a very good value overall. And then we'll wind up in the end having two 12-inch transmission mains connected directly from the Jones Road intersection at 28 and the new 12-inch main that we put in out in Mara Vista. So that'll put the 12-inch main right down Randolph and Spring Bars. Cash flow is a little bit hard to follow because it's all in blue. You can see that the green dots or bluish dots is the Robert B. Hour adjusted budget. Beneath that, however, is their original budget, which would have been a blue line, but this is sitting right on top of it. The change was so insignificant that it doesn't really reflect it on the chart. And then over here on the left, the light blue line that you see here is the $4.59 million that's already been paid out on the budget or on the project. And the payments are a little bit ahead, and that's because the project is a little bit ahead. They're doing very well out there as far as construction goes. So right now where we are, Falmouth Heights is pretty much complete. Lucerne was done. They're 60% done on Miami. They've done a lot of the testing of the water main or sewer mains and laterals has already been completed. Most of the services are in, so within the next 3 weeks or so, they'll be pretty much done in Falmouth Heights. The Mara Vista force main was already installed. They're working on the sewer, both the trunk sewer as well as the force main sewer that's going in on Spring Bars Road. The mall lift station, they've been working on that. They have the wet well in, so they'll be working on that building for that lift station over the next 3 months or so. They're also beginning at the Alphonse lift station, which is down by the school, and an upgrade on the Robbins Road lift station. We're also upgrading 2 of the other lift stations, Chivrix as well as Jones Palmer. They're the 2 larger ones, but just within the last couple of days, the bypass was installed on the Robbins Road lift station, so that's why that area is being dug up there. They'll be pushing the force main out to Route 28, and that'll connect down at Scranton Avenue. So that's going to be occurring very shortly. And then in Mara Vista, the main line for the 4-inch force main is already in down there, so they'll be doing lateral legs of that. Those are not service laterals. Those will be for some of the side streets, and that'll be starting now as well. So this is where we were in June on Falmouth Heights Road. Then in August, this is just showing a main that had already gone in and some of the restoration work that's occurring. This was a gravity main in that particular area. The directional drilling for Mara Vista. Here you see 2 of the 4-inch high-density polyethylene mains that have already been heat fused. It's hard to see over here, but you can see this pipe here and this pipe here. There's actually a machine and an individual there who is in the process of fusing the pipe. The actual drill rig is down here. It's a little bit hard to see, and this is just one of their water tankers that they had sitting there. So it's a lot less disruptive to do it that way, and the end product when it was done, the only reason that you know they were there is every 2 blocks or so they would have a couple of 4x6 holes. This is the mall lift station. This was some of the deepest excavation that there's been on the project. This is down about 22 feet. So this was before the wet well was installed, and this is the storage wet well going in. It's where the project was in Falmouth Heights in October. The progress that they made since then, and as I said, Miami's about 60% done, and Lucerne is also done. And then this was the overview, so you can see that the Falmouth Heights area is pretty much complete, and this was the force main that went in on Mara Vista. This is Spring Bars Road and some of the gravity main on the trunk line, and then they also have to put in the force mains and the remainder of the gravity mains going out in this direction down toward Randolph. This here is the area main that was already installed at the Jones Road Stop and Shop intersection. And then that main will have to continue down here to head up to the Alphonse Street lift station. So that work will be continuing as well. And that was it.
Any questions from the board? Sue?
Just since it's, we just had the Cape Light Compact presentation, in terms of the water treatment plant, are there any considerations to look at alternative efficient power like solar, or any consideration in that regard at this early date?
The project did not originally have solar on the design, but the roof was designed that it could handle solar. But for a plant like this is a process plant, so it takes a significant amount of energy to start and run the motors, right? They have tremendous startups on that. But we do have VFDs, or variable frequencies drives, built into it. And what that does, for all intents and purposes, if you have a fan at home and it's a regular 3-speed fan, you turn it on to 3, it tries to go from 0 to 60 just like that. And it's a tremendous amount of power that it takes to do that. Well, large pumps and motors on treatment plants are no different. They try to do the same thing, those jackrabbit starts and stops. So a VFD ramps it up slowly, and then it adjusts its speed in relation to the flow condition, so that once it's running, you've already incurred the electricity to get it started. So once it's running, you want it to be able to continue to run efficiently. So those have already been built in as well.
Thank you.
Ms. Watson?
This is just a question I've been asked with people that live off Mara Vista and in the Heights. What's going to happen to their road? Is that all going to be paved and is going to be new for them again, or?
Yes, the upper portion of Mara Vista, as you can see, the lower portion is not bad. The upper portion of Mara Vista, that asphalt is over 12 inches thick. They are going to have a very wide trench when they go to put the gravity main in up there. And I believe, from a preliminary perspective, we are only talking about a couple of feet on either side of the road edge that would have been remaining. So yeah, that one will probably get a full width overlay once it's done.
And in the Heights area, it's just very dusty and muddy and...
Right. It all depends on which roads they are and what the actual road condition was. In many areas, the trench, once it's fully restored, right now it's all just temporary paving. Once the final paving goes in for a trench restoration, if the road was capable of taking it, that's where it would be. If the road was very deteriorated or the excavation was very, very large, then we would overlay those roads. But there were not full width overlays considered for all of the roads in Mara Vista. Would have doubled the cost of the project. Yeah, it might have. Would have been a significant amount in order to try to do that. And most of the roads are actually in good shape and can withstand a trench repair.
Okay.
I mean, I know you have to budget for change orders, and you always tell us that there have been some. But would you say that so far they're pretty much in line with what you anticipated, and are they still within the budget?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well within. Well within. On both of these projects, we're carrying about $3.5 million on contingencies.
So when you talk about the budget line that you put on there, I think it was $48 million in one, that's pre-contingency or?
Pre-contingency, yes.
So we still have room in a lot of, we still have, as you're saying, $3 million in contingency room there before we're.
3.6 on both.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? Snow?
Snow operations. Going to go a little bit all over the place here. I'm going to start out with basic snow operations to begin with, in accordance with how we'll manage a typical snowstorm Then I'll fall back a little bit to the January storm that we had, the blizzard, which was known as Juno, and I'll be looking at another blizzard in 2009 that had no name because they didn't name them back then. So these are some of the factors that determine how we're going to manage any particular snow event. The performance factors, costs are always a consideration. We try to control the costs. Weather is the biggest unknown as a rule. Equipment and personnel can be dependent on the time of year or time of day or season. But we try to have the maximum amount of personnel and obviously the maximum amount of equipment to be able to bring to bear. But one of the worst weeks you can have a storm to begin with is Christmas week. That's when you're around the holidays, that's when everybody's on vacation, so you can bring less personnel and equipment to bear. And of course, communications throughout all the town departments and all the contractors and everything is very important. So some of the other factors as far as when a snowstorm occurs, the time of year, day of week, time of day, they're all important. If it happens at rush hour, either in the morning or the afternoon, that's problematic for us and problematic for the public. The day of the week is important. If it happens on a weekday, then we're going to have business traffic out on the road. If it happens on a Saturday or Sunday, we don't have the business traffic and we can usually work better. The time of the year, as I already indicated, the holidays are usually the worst. Duration, as far as how long it snows, the longer it snows, the longer the crews have to stay out. So we obviously prefer to get the snow as quickly as possible. Then, of course, how much it is with regard to intensity. Then temperature plays a very important role. And there's two types of temperature that we're actually concerned with here. Ambient air temperature and the ground temperature. For ambient air, 25 to 35 is one range as far as the effectiveness of salt as a de-icing or anti-icing compound. 15 to 25 is another range for that. And then 5 to 15 is the basic limit of traditional road salt or rock salt, bless you. And when we get down in that range, that's when we can start having problems with black ice. Ground temperatures are important because the ground temperatures determine how fast or slow the snow is going to be able to melt once it hits the ground. Basically, I have three situation levels, level 1, 2, and 3. Level 1 is if it's only going to be about 3 inches or less, then we're going to treat the roads so we don't wind up with icing conditions. We may wind up with some type of limiting plowing, but generally the only town forces will be able to handle that. For a level 2 event, 3 to 12 inches, we're going to pre-treat all of the roads and probably have to do it multiple times. All town plows and private plows will be called in. For a level 3 event, 12 inches or more, all of the same. One of the major differences, however, between a 2 and a 3, and I have a notation at the bottom where level 2 is 2 or more passes. So if we're only going to get about 12 inches of snow, after a couple of passes on the road, then they can start curbing the road, all right, and moving on to other areas. If it's going to be a level 3 event of any duration or any significant snowfall, the problem for us is that's where those trucks stay. They almost have to live in that route. We don't have the ability to be able to clear a route and move them on to somewhere else. Okay, so that's one of the bigger problems with a level 3 event. We have basically two approaches that towns can use if they're going to be using salt as a de-icing or anti-icing compound. De-icing is a reactive approach, and there are many towns that still do this. Believe it or not, one of the reasons, and I still find it hard to believe, is that the argument of de-icing versus anti-icing, they don't want to pay the money to put them out in advance of the snow. So our crews are always out at least 2 hours in advance of the snowstorm in order to pre-treat the roads. But by not doing that, once that ice bonds to the road, you're going to be playing with it for days and or weeks after the event. De-icing works from the top down. It takes 6 times as long. What most people don't know also for de-icing is that salt requires moisture in order to activate. We tend to think of snow as moisture, but when we do have a snow event, sometimes the air has very little moisture in it, and sometimes when we have a wetter snow, it has a lot of moisture in it. But on a dry snow, that salt will sit there for a very long time. When you're using anti-icing, it pre-activates the salt, so it doesn't matter what the salt or water content of the atmosphere is at the time. It's up to 6 times less costly than de-icing because the goal here is that it doesn't allow the ice to form to begin with. So we generally use less salt as a result because it's pre-wetting. Pre-wetting, if you look at, and I'm going to be showing you a little bit on anti-icing anyway with salt, But pre-wetting, the chemical itself that we use to pre-wet it contains about 50 to 60% calcium chloride. Calcium chloride is much more effective at de-icing or anti-icing than conventional salt is. So for anti-icing, traditional method is sodium chloride or rock salt. It's effective down to 15 degrees, but barely effective down to 15 degrees. Because you can see it'll melt 46 pounds of snow at 30 degrees, but it'll only melt 5 pounds of snow when it gets down to 10 degrees. But the good thing here is the pre-wetting takes it down to a -5, so it dramatically increases the effectiveness across that range of temperatures just by pre-wetting the salt with the additive. Calcium chloride by itself, this is the white pellets that you see that a lot of people will put on sidewalks and what have you, is very effective. It'll go down to -15, but it's very, very, very expensive to use at the municipal application level. The wetting agent, this is just one of the wetting agents known as Ice Band. There's a number of different products out there, but what we look for is to have at least a 50-50 mix, if you will, of calcium chloride, and the 50% brewer's solid solubles in this particular product is actually alcohol-based. So the net effect there is kind of like having antifreeze in a car because they have glycol alcohol, and that also depresses and or increases the boiling point of water and depresses the freezing point of water. By activating the salt, it puts a viscous type of compound on the salt, so it doesn't have the tendency to bounce right off when it hits the road. It has a tendency to stick and stay. So this is where we were earlier this year, back to the blizzard or Blizzard Juno that we had on January 26th and 27th. The last significant blizzard that we had was back in 2009. So this is basically a comparison between the two. 2009 we had sustained winds of 39 miles an hour, and a blizzard is 35 miles an hour wind speed for 3 hours or more. In this one we had 45 mile an hour winds. Duration for 2009, 19 hours, and 21 and a half hours for Juno. Gusts of over 50 miles an hour in 2009, 68 miles an hour, which is tropical storm strength for 2015. Total snowfall back then was 18. We got 24.8 inches on this particular event. And the crew time back then was 29 hours. Crew time here was 39 hours. This is important for everyone to understand the dedication of not only our crews, but the private crews. Here, our crew time was 39. Private crews was about 24. This is like handing somebody, you're coming into work in the morning and getting handed a set of keys and a cup of coffee and saying your truck's outside, plow's all ready, it's all gassed up. Hit the road, go on 95, head to Florida. I want you to plow every inch of it on the way down. When you get there, turn around and come back. This is, people would not do that in a regular car. No less a truck and plowing, and no less a truck and plowing in a blizzard. And you're going to see one photo that I have of what a driver sees, with respect to a blizzard. That is very, very intense, very, very tiring and stressful. But that's what they do. So in this particular event, they worked 39 hours and did a tremendous job. So we could talk about Boston, but I don't think anybody really wants to hear about Boston, right? It's Falmouth that we really care about. So some basic statistics. Our yearly snowfall average is only 23.6 inches on average per year. We got more than that in one day, in one storm. For those that we remember, back in '69 on November 11th, we got 36 inches. That was our record event. As I mentioned earlier about the temperatures, how important they are, just taking January 27th through February 28th, that's a total of 33 days, lows of 21 degrees or colder for 29 out of those days, and lows of 12 degrees or colder for 21 out of those days, and then the coldest day was -8. The problem here, and there were two. First, we had the big snowfall, 25 inches of snow and no place to put it. Then you can see here all these other snow events that we had after that, more snow added to it and there's no place to put it. One of the bigger problems that we had in between, we had no salt. We started out great. The barn was full, and we made it through Juno with all the salt. That was fine. We didn't have anything after the fact. It was sitting up in Chelmsford, but because of Boston, Worcester, and the other major cities, all the truckers were running snow. Nobody could run salt. So all we were getting were dribs and drabs of salt. All we had was enough to put some very small amounts on the road, and that was problematic. So when you look at these events, these 14 events here, and we actually had, I think it was 23 events for the entire season, but this is just from January to March 20th here, that with the exception of March 5th to the 15th, none of these are a week apart. They're only about 3 to 5 days apart on average. There's no rest for the crews. We have to be able to remove snow, push snow back, okay, to try to curb it again. And curbing it is extremely difficult after a major blizzard like that. Why? The worst thing you can do is to go by somebody's driveway, that they already shoveled it out. And after a couple of rains, when it's now rock ice out there instead of snow, and pushing it back, they can't handle it. So for us, what we have to do, when we make a determination, we're going to push back after we've already done it initially, we have to send other trucks behind it in order to try to clear those driveways out, because you can't just put that on the homeowner, but it's very manpower intensive. So for lessons learned or areas of improvement with respect to not only that storm, but the subsequent events, and looking on how we can improve future events, we have right now 9 of the larger trucks. 8 of them are at 35,000 GVW and only 1 at the 65,000 range. The larger trucks can handle much heavier snows, and that was one of the problems near the end of that storm. Snow is just too heavy for a lot of the trucks to move it. So to start replacing the 35,000 GVW fleet with 65,000 GVW trucks, so what we're looking at here is probably converting, we're getting 1 this year, but it'll be too late for this season, and then we'll probably be converting another 2 of those. It's not that we're going to convert all of them, but we should have at least 4 in the fleet. So they're larger, they're more durable, they don't take the strain like some of the other trucks do, so these here ones will have a longer life cycle as a result. Power anchored plows for the 4x4s, we're already in the process of that. We've been doing that now for the last year, so we just have a couple more to go. But what that does on the smaller 4x4s, especially with pickups, even with a power angling plow, it can only go one way. The friction that it has when it's up against a large amount of snow on the road, it still can't handle it. By the plow actually being able to form a V, it forms a wedge, and it dramatically reduces the friction so that those trucks can then actually plow roads. Our mobile radio system is obsolete. I'm not just saying that, the FCC said it, because we have low band frequencies and they phased them out. So we're going to have to go into a high band to begin with, and one of the problems now is we have 2 low band frequencies. So the Water and Wastewater Division are on 1 frequency, Highway, Parks, and everybody else is on another frequency, and none of them can talk to police or fire. So eventually, that's what we're going to be looking to do, is to turn the radio system over so that we have a much more effective mobile communication system.
Do you have GPS devices in your trucks at all?
We're getting,
Oh,
we're
you're
getting
getting
there.
to that. Okay.
That's on the next one. Widening the sidewalks, I'm sure that many people know. We have 60 miles of sidewalk, and they're really old. They're really bad. They're really actually just little paths. They're not even sidewalks. They're in bad shape. We have been replacing them. I know you can see that Lakeview we did, and we just did Brick Hill Road, and there's a number of others that we've already done, but we're going to enhance that program over the next several years to try to widen these sidewalks, so they'll not only be more effective for the residents, but much easier and faster to clear, and it gives us a place to put the snow when we do it. As far as miscellaneous policy, some of the things for the board, the town to consider, one of the bigger problems that we have is trucks pushing snow, private snow, so to speak, onto town roads or sidewalks. When you look at Main Street, it's not that bad up here in the downtown area until you get down in Nye Road and past Nye Road out there, especially on the right-hand side. We have these mountains of snow that are completely blocking the sidewalks. It's blocking some of the road cuts, so it makes it very difficult and dangerous for people to be able to get out. We've had a lot of streets, Quistit Ave, where trucks just come out and they push the snow onto the roadway, leaving large piles there, creates blind spots and everything else. So they're not supposed to be pushing snow onto the town roads, and especially after we went by and plowed it. So it's not that difficult, but we would need to establish a policy to that effect. And then no street parking during snow emergencies. It's not to say that would happen all the time, but when we have a significant event, but it's not significant enough for the governor to declare a state of emergency and keep everybody off the road, this is something that we should have in the toolbox to be able to implement, because when there are cars parked on any street, but especially the downtown areas, when there's cars parked on any street, it makes it very difficult for our plows. And then when we swerve around, after that car is gone, the road's not plowed correctly, and it makes it dangerous. So those are just two policies to consider for the future. We determined to revise our plow routes, so we have 7 major routes, and within all of those 7 major routes originally, there were 53 minor routes or secondary routes, so we went from 7 to 8. So one of those routes was very large, and we cut it up and made them a little bit smaller so they're more manageable. And then we redesigned a couple of the other 53 routes to turn it into a total of 55 routes now for the secondaries. One of the problems that we had is we have route supervisors that we have on every snow event. They have very important tasks and purposes, so it's not just about route supervision. Generally, they would have about 13 or 14 routes apiece that they would handle. There were 4 supervisors. But for snow or ambulance emergencies or police or fire emergencies, where areas weren't plowed yet, these trucks could go in advance, on demand. If we have accidents, things of that nature, people need to go to the hospital, whatever the case may be, we have people available. And then they could also do some of the limited plowing. The problem with a major storm like we had in January, however, they wind up out there doing whole routes. So they're not performing the job that they're supposed to. And then the problem we had at the end of that, we actually missed streets. And that's inexcusable. We shouldn't miss a street. It's one thing if we knew we missed a street, but when somebody has to call us to tell us we missed a street, that's not good. We should know that. So between missed streets and certain roads that were inadequately plowed, we should have known about those as well. That's a problem with route supervisors not being able to, staying on task and being able to do their job. So we're considering adding one, but even if we don't add one, we're going to be holding them back so they can perform their tasks the way they should be. GPS transponders, we're going to be putting those in all the vehicles, and that's happening shortly. Shortly meaning it should start within a couple of weeks. No tablets for the route supervisors. When the route supervisors are out there, yes, they have communication, but they don't know where anybody is. And as I just said, they're covering 14 routes, all right? And then they have the 7 larger or 8 larger routes. So this will let them know where a lot of the crew vehicles are, all right? So it's much more effective as far as overall operations. Wall-mounted monitors for the operations right now, we would have to look at it on a computer monitor, but we do have an operations room down at the main building that we use for snow operations, so this will be much more effective there, as well as the office staff that comes in during the evenings to monitor the phones and everything. They will have a monitor so that they can see where all the crews are as well. We've revised the contractor rates already to try to make them more competitive with the other towns.
Before you leave that page, could you talk about the value of the GPS?
Yes.
In the trucks?
Yes.
I'm going back to my Plymouth days. So.
Okay. The GPS trackers to begin with are predominantly safety features, okay, for a vehicle. And I could actually go back and tell you about a fatal event that had occurred in one town where something like this would have been very, very effective. But nonetheless, it's for safety and efficiency. When you have the GPS transponders in these vehicles, then you can see where the vehicles are, right, on a real-time map. In real time, you know their direction, you know their speed, their actual location. If anything were to happen with the GPS unit itself, the system would alarm to let the operators know that the instrument has been disabled for whatever reason. But they're extremely valuable. They really get very valuable in the larger cities because these GPS tracking systems would know if the plow was down or up. Ours doesn't yet, but hopefully at some point in the future we're going to get there. Tells if the plow's up or down, tells if the spreader is on or off, and then it starts actually marking out the roads to show which roads were plowed and which roads remain to be plowed. So it knows it made one pass, and it's pre-programmed to know how many passes it takes to clear a road. So these systems can get very, very sophisticated, but the system I just described is very expensive. So this is something less than that, but very, very effective, especially for conducting operations like this, and has other year-round benefits.
But also, if you had to redirect a truck somewhere else,
Correct.
you'd be able to see where the closest vehicle was and
Correct, and that's why even having those note tablets for the route supervisors is very effective for that. Because when we communicate from the operations center to the route supervisors for an issue, they have to go find somebody. They don't know. They have a general idea where they are. This way they know exactly where they are. So, for the residents, and I would have to leave with these suggestions, I don't know why everybody likes playing in the snow, but it is dangerous to be out there, very dangerous to be out there. If they can, to stay at home. A lot of people do not believe that a four-wheel drive is indestructible. It is not. All right? Ice is ice. And I don't care if it's got four-wheel drive, four-wheel brakes, or anything else. It's still not going to stop the way they think it is. All right? They're good in snow. They have good traction in snow. But they're not that way on ice. To try to keep the cars off of the road helps everybody. Doing their shopping in advance of the storm. And believe it or not, I think a lot of people actually do this. These last two is what they forget. As far as topping off their fuel tank at home, if they have heating oil, they should be thinking a few days in advance of any storm and trying to keep a topped off tank during the winter months anyway. And the same thing is true with your car, having a full tank of gas in the car. Not only gives you that mobility, especially if you have to evacuate, if a situation develops on the Cape where we have to evacuate, you may not be able to find a gas station. If you did, you may not be able to get gas out of it. All right, that's exactly what happened with Florida several years ago. And something as simple as keeping blankets in the car. If you get stranded out in the snow and you have blankets in the car, at least you're going to be able to keep warm. So just take a couple old blankets and throw them in the car. And I know you probably thought I was done, but I'm not. These were just some pictures. This is Boston. Even though I said we wouldn't talk about Boston, this is the Seaport area, one of their snow repositories where they were trucking all of that snow. This particular pile here lasted till almost August before it melted. All right, it still had about maybe 20% of that volume in June and July. So it was pretty significant. This is what a plow driver looks at for 39 hours when they're plowing in a storm like that on a blizzard. You can see that the visibility is extremely limited. And that's one of the major problems with a regular snowstorm versus a blizzard, that we have to reduce our road speeds by about half. So it takes twice as long to get the same effect under normal conditions. These are just some other pictures that I found interesting around the world when we think we have it bad sometimes. We mentioned about the cars, and there is a car there that got buried in the snow. I don't know where this was. I want to say it was in the Soviet Union somewhere, but it's not a place I'd want to be. And these guys are nuts. This one was actually in Japan. And I don't know where that was, but I wish I was doing it. And the same with this guy. So, and that's it.
Sue?
Just quickly, I want to kind of state my impressed view and appreciation of the fact that you used a lot of this meeting to explain and to show how internally you review things in terms of what we did right, what we didn't do right, what we could do better, what we need in order to do the job better. And really I know there was a lot of customer service requests that went out even just on the edge of the end of the storm, because I got a lot of emails, requests, problems, notifications, and I would, forward it to the town manager, who would report back to me about you addressing those customer service issues quickly, and people would then get back to me and show that they were satisfied. So I just want to, in that light, I want to probably make a request of the chair at some point to go ahead and update the policies that you've requested be updated, and then to really just ask what, if there's anything else people at home can do after having reviewed last year's storm and looking ahead.
I really think it's very hard for the people at home. Their modern expectations are different. Technology's come a long way. Our effectiveness has come a long way. We do actually provide black asphalt, as difficult as that may be, but it's not always possible. But unfortunately, that's almost the expectation. I know in the old days, if it started to snow that night, people would get up a little bit earlier because they had to clear their snow, they had to clear their driveway, they had to take their time to work. It was going to be rough. Today, not so much. It's like, wake up in the morning, how come that road's not done yet? How come my road isn't done yet? Everybody's road can't be the first road. And I think that that's what I would want them to try to understand, that these types of events are very time-consuming, and it takes a long time to get around to everybody. But I have to admit that in Falmouth, I think everybody actually has been pretty reasonable. I know we get a lot of complaints, but we also get a lot of the compliments, and they're not as frequent and everything. But one of our bigger problems this past year was the trash. Believe it or not. You would think that we were really getting overwhelmed with the snow. It was the trash. It was actually the trash because the roads weren't capable of handling the trucks, and then they would have to cancel the routes. And people, when a person has trudged from their house down to the street with that trash and recyclables, and then it doesn't get picked up, they're mad. They're mad. So even in situations like that, I would say just try to be patient. We're trying to do our best, and let us know.
And we've also addressed some of the trash issues by additional smaller trucks, and I know you've worked hard negotiating that contract to include more of those customer service issues.
Right. If I may, real quick too, on that, we're also going to be establishing one of the things that I advised the board of was a ViewWorks portal. ViewWorks is the software system that we use for our work orders to be able to generate customer complaints and customer service requests. So we're going to be establishing that portal, thanks to Kathy Marks, our business systems manager, for this snow season. So people will be able to get on the computer and let us know what their issue is. It'll automatically go to a supervisor, be converted into a work order and processed. So they'll be able to do that starting this year.
And
so we're very happy with that.
That'll be announced on the website so people know it's available.
Yes.
Great.
Ms. Moffett?
Could we have a snow emergency announcement in Falmouth? I mean, is there a time that as you're looking at the weather and it's 24 hours, is there a way to have an announcement for the whole town?
To have the parking ban.
Yes. Believe it or not, probably one of the most effective is the town website. I mean, you can get into something like reverse 911, but we're not quite there yet. But that way is probably one of the most expedient ways to notify people. But through the website, FCTV has been very helpful with us. They work well with us. So we always suggest to people that's where you go for information anyway. So in between those two, it's one way
So we
to...
don't have that reverse 911? We can't contact everyone in the town?
Not us right now. That is something that we are working on. I mean, the school has it in limited capacity. Police and fire have availability through the county system, but we're getting there.
Okay.
I'd like to talk a bit about private roads, because there were some articles in the paper the last few days about towns and what they're doing about plowing private roads. And I know about 50% of the roads in Falmouth are private roads, but we have a policy on private roads. So could you just mention that so people who do live on private roads understand?
Right. We have 230 miles of town-owned roads and 185 miles of private road. So it's almost a 50-50 split, if you will. And I think that most people on private roads do understand they're responsible for all of the maintenance on their road. The town does not perform that maintenance with the exception of courtesy grading that we would do for a gravel road. But the towns are not obligated to provide services for private roads. In our particular case, for all of our routes, all private roads are included, so we are going to get to them. We don't consider them second-class citizens, which means that we don't do the town roads first for the town-owned roads and then start going to the private roads. It's wherever they happen to be on that particular route. That's the order that they're going to get done in. So there's no disparity with regard to that. So we do that as a courtesy, as a town, because during these snow events, private road or not, we do want to make sure that that road is open for emergency vehicle access, whether it be police and/or fire, or any other type of medical emergency or other emergency that the residents may have. Beyond that, however, that's where other towns also get into it. A lot of towns have a debate about whether or not they're even going to plow the private road to begin with. And then some will only do a private road if it's requested by the owners on that private road. So for us, where we kind of draw the line is the salt applications on the private roads, that we will do limited sanding operations on private roads, like where we'll have hills, curves, dangerous intersections, and things of that nature. But we cannot and would not be able to provide black asphalt services for every road in town. It's just not doable for us. If we want to hire more people, more equipment, fine. But we're not, that's one of the problems that we have right now, is trying to do too much. So.
That's helpful, I think, for
Sam?
people.
One of the chronic problems that I saw in Juneau was the sidewalk that goes along beside Morris Pond, excuse me. They plowed the sidewalk, and then the plows would come along in the street, and this was an unusual snow, I know. It would fill the sidewalk up, and there's a lot of people that walk from Gifford Street. They don't have transportation of their own, but they work at Stop and Shop or other stores in the mall. And they would try to walk down the sidewalk, and they'd have to get out into the street, and it was quite dangerous because of that mix of pedestrians. And I just wondered whether you looked at that problem and thought about coordinating so that when your plows make a pass in the street, you have a clearing of the sidewalks thereafter.
You're absolutely right. That was one of our other shortcomings with regard to that storm in particular. That's a very narrow sidewalk to begin with. It does run all the way from Route 28 out to Gifford Street, but it is a school zone, so it's worthy of additional attention, if you will. So when we traditionally do things like Main Street and do the snow clearing there, we will actually physically remove the snow, and for that location, that's what we need to be doing. Until such time as we would ever widen that sidewalk and provide a repository for the snow on one side or the other where it wouldn't have to come back, we would have to be able to remove the snow. So we would plow it, push it out in the street, but then we'd have to clear it off of the street and remove it, physically remove it. But those are areas that we're going to have to identify for future snow events so that we get out there and do that.
One other question. How do you decide how much salt to have on hand each fall in preparation for the winter?
Well, first of all, we normally try to start out with a full barn, which fortunately for Juneau, we did have that. Unfortunately, most people would categorize our snow season as significant snowfalls, and that's not where it's at. I mentioned there were 14 storms up here, we had like 23. Whenever we get into an icing condition on the road, our crews are going out, and we have to use the salt in order to de-ice those roads, even if it's only a dusting of snow. So if we have a lot of those, and there were a couple of years where we had a lot of them, and we used a lot of product, and we burned a lot of overtime as a result of that. So it's not just the significant storms, it's actually the minor ones that are costly, if you will. So, but I am very, very pleased with where we are on that program. It has been very, very effective, because I recall so many times driving down any of the roads where it was like driving down a washboard. It was terrible for days and sometimes weeks after the event, and that's the difference between anti-icing and de-icing. You know, once that bond forms, you're going to try to burn through from the top with any kind of product you put on it, and it's going to take a very long time. So we've been very effective having those crews out there, and I know it looks kind of funny. It's like the guy that you see on TV waiting at the coffee shop at Dunkin' Donuts waiting for the first snowflake to fall. Well, our guys are already out there, and they're not even waiting for it. And I know it seems funny a couple hours when there's not even a snowflake in the sky. But if you don't do it then, you're going to be in trouble when it starts. So they do a great job of it.
I just want to say, I remember telling you last year, and of course that was a big snowstorm, driving back from Barnstable in the storm, and I knew without even looking that when the sign said entering Falmouth, because I knew the minute I hit Falmouth, because the roads were dry, and all the other roads from Barnstable on down were awful, snow and ice and everything else, but the minute you hit the town line, the roads were clear. So it works.
Are you able to hire enough drivers? I mean, I just see the signs on Route 3 and going into Boston that they're looking for drivers to clear the snow, and how is it here?
So far, so good. And the drivers that we have are they're return drivers, okay? So they've worked, most of them have worked with us for many years. They're very familiar with the routes. So we're actually doing very well on that. And I want to thank the board for the snow plow rates. That goes a long way to keeping a lot of those contractors here.
Good.
So thank you.
Good.
All this preparation is going to make sure it doesn't snow this year, right?
I hope not. Believe it or not, they are cyclic in nature. They're not predictable, but they are cyclic in nature, and it's generally about 5 to 7 year spans when we have a blizzard. So, okay.
Can I just go back to one question on the filtration? I think it was the second, and it talked about the Mercer, the word Mercer. I'm looking for that. What did that have to do? Nope. I'll find it. I'll call you and ask you. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Questions from the audience?
Excuse me?
Are you going to have questions from...
Yeah, are there any questions from any of the neighborhoods? Yes, sir.
I'm Richard Kelleher, Precinct 7.
Okay, hold on a second, I need to move the microphone back.
Oh, I can stand by that.
Well, it's...
Ray, this is for you. Doug just asked for questions.
The question I have, years ago I lived in Bourne, and there was quite a controversy on the plowing in areas where the commuters were shut off to the public. Scraggy Neck, where they had a century, and the people that had created this whole thing, their argument, they were attached to a state law that says that town can plow private roads, but not a private road that doesn't have public access. Have you guys ever looked into that at all? I mean, if you stop plowing Ballymead, I mean, I don't want to pay for plowing Ballymead if I can't go in there, or Penzance Point. It's just...
Okay, what do we do?
There are no legal distinctions that I'm aware of with respect to public access, private road versus conventional type of private road, nor do we put any distinctions on them. So that's why all of the roads in Falmouth do get plowed. And I do want to emphasize, though, that I do believe in that, regardless of where the road is or what the road is or how the road is used. Should an emergency occur, it is absolutely critical that either police, fire, or ambulance, or something like that be able to respond on any of those roads. So that is why we do what we do. But I'm not aware of any legal reason why it would have to be.
Thank you. Did it answer the question? Yes, sir.
Richard Bowen from Craigie Ridge. The question I have primarily is how come pickups without weight in the back try to plow roads? And primarily because they can't. So how can you justify pickups without weight?
I'm not sure if he's referring to municipal pickups or private pickups, but he's absolutely right. Even a four-wheel drive vehicle without ballast in the back has a very difficult time, if any, on plowing. It can only plow usually small amounts of snow. So you are absolutely right. But for what it's worth, we do have a ballast pile that they would be able to use down at the yard.
Do they use it?
Some do.
How do you make sure that they do use it?
Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying as a condition of or prerequisite to going into plowing that they do that. Yes.
Yeah.
We'll look into that. That's not a bad idea. Yes.
And another thing.
And there are also some pickup drivers who are not being hired by the town who go out there and get hired to plow by individuals. But are you specifically talking about the town hired pickups? Okay.
Yeah, and also, does anyone actually check on these people?
Yes, that was the purpose of the route supervisors during a presentation when I
But
indicated that.
last year, they couldn't check because they couldn't get around.
Well, they got around. Yeah, our guys did get around okay, but they were around doing the wrong things.
If
They
you
were
could just
doing
remember,
other things.
the conversation was with me, and I'll direct it towards Mr. Jack.
Yes.
The other thing, we live on slight inclines, which is called Westmoreland for one and Carlisle for another. And neither one of those were passable. People going, they were only one lane for one thing. And by the way, this lasted for 6 weeks. If you were going up either one of the two streets and a person was coming down, they couldn't back up. You had to back up, which meant you backed out on 28A. It was a dangerous situation for 6 weeks, and we couldn't get it solved. Got a comment? Rich, do you mind?
Sure.
Yeah, I just
You have to come up to the
microphone.
Introduce yourself.
He's my cohort, too.
I didn't say that. Yeah, I am. I'm Morris Rowe from Westmoreland Drive and Craigie Ridge. As I'm sitting here listening to the difficulty with this for us and for the town, it's everybody. And I want to appreciate, I want to say thank you to the town manager for sending us a specific response to be here tonight, because we had the opportunity to get out to our members and get some feedback from them because of that lead time. I will describe the situation in Carlisle and Westmoreland, ironically, as the perfect storm. And I'm not saying we're not all special, but there's a factor that Mr. Jack didn't mention when they determine where you guys are going to spend, or they're going to spend the money, and that's topography. And as Dick mentioned, the topography in this particular case with those two hills created a situation which was much more severe from a public safety standpoint, because they are both school bus pickup places. So we had kids in a one-lane hill covered in snow with people who couldn't get up and had to back down, and in many cases had to back out into the highway to get a run in order to get up the hill of one lane, whereupon they met somebody coming down the hill. And that lasted for 6 weeks, and twice a day there were children there. So I just wanted to describe that if there's a way that you determine whether there's an intersection or the intersection of different factors where they can receive special treatment. And in that particular case, if we didn't get enough sand on either one of those places, twice a day, it was an extremely dangerous situation for children as well as adults. So, sorry.
One of the issues that we do have on the private roads is we certainly are eager to plow them. Once we start treating private roads.
This isn't a private road.
Oh, it's all okay.
No, so no, it's not a private road.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Town took the
Regard.
roads.
Yeah. Okay.
Just a quick question, maybe an update on the policy. I was up Blacksmith Shop Road, same situation, very, very steep. And one of the things that used to happen years past to a couple of very steep hills, there used to be a sandbox where even residents, if they needed it, could get sand to put under the vehicles to get them up the hill so they wouldn't roll back on 28A. And I would call about October, and I just wonder, is that something the town still does or no? Because that would help both of these situations if people had sand available.
Yes, it's not something that I'm aware of. But given the comments that we've just received on this anyway, these are classic situations where, yes, we should be having the multiple applications of sand or something in an area like that. So we would have appeared to have missed the boat on that.
Sometimes
But it is
the
noted, for the future.
sometimes the sand would only be in the bottom third. And you know, I'm not sure that the guys, as they're coming out, you know, well, maybe that's because they just run out at that particular time.
You have to come back to the microphone just so that people at home can.
I just want to say, it's also, thank you for saying that, and possibly putting a double or different, more applications on it. But in a hill that long, it's almost a quarter of a mile long, as many of you know. Doing the bottom third doesn't cut it.
Okay,
So that's another aspect of it.
great. That's good to make sure we can note that down. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you all for coming and thank you for your input. Thank you, Mr. Jack. Next item is a request for a sign variance to place an off-premise sign at Peg Noonan Park. This is from Falmouth Corral. We had continued this from last week. We've done some investigation. Certainly there are times that signs are put on public property, sometimes with permission, sometimes without. So it's come back to us to discuss what we would like to do at this time. Ms. Moffett?
I don't see that there's any problem putting a sign for the Falmouth Corral on Peg Noonan Park. It's a community activity. It's a nonprofit organization. I don't see a problem with it.
Any other comments?
And there's two sizes, so whichever one they are going to choose, that would be up to them.
Well, they're talking about the large one.
Okay.
I think we should have a policy about that, because I'm sure there are a lot of organizations that would want to do that. So we should have parameters, so we're not basing it on specific events or organizations.
Well, I'd be curious to know what the value is of having a sign on Peg Noonan Park. I mean, most people want them on sidewalks or grassy areas that are close to the curbs as opposed to the park. I hadn't really thought about it till now, but I can't see any real value to having it on Peg Noonan Park when it's away from the street.
Most of the signs I remember seeing on public property are within the town, the road right-of-way.
Yeah.
Not actually on parkland like
On
this.
parkland, you're right. I guess there's
They
no
must see something, though. I mean, they're asking for it. It's not as if anyone suggested it from the selectmen's group. They must see a reason that, and they're all over town at the churches. Whenever the corral has a concert, the churches will have them up. So maybe they're looking at that as it's a center of town, and because you can see all the other places that they're going to have their signs.
Well, I just don't see any, well, I don't know what the value is of having a sign on Peg Noonan Park. And if we grant it to one person or one entity, does that mean then
That's what I'm saying.
we set a precedent, so anybody else that comes along that thinks that there's some value to having a sign on Peg Noonan Park would want it there also?
So we should have a policy that does that or doesn't it, rather than deciding it situationally.
I would say,
Is
especially.
anyone here? Is she here?
I mean, I can see, well, sidewalks or grassy areas and on the curbs, when they ask to put them up on corners, that's what we usually approve, but I don't recall having a request to actually put it on town property like a park before. So I think that might be,
I would prefer to have Peg Noonan Park not covered with signs. either
I would
one
agree.
or
I don't think.
multiple ones.
It's not what you want to have downtown, is to have signs on Peg Noonan Park, really, I would think.
How long is
Sam?
it going to be there?
Sam?
I mean, I question the effectiveness of having a sign
Yeah.
there. It's such a busy area. I mean, when I come, Library Lane, I'm looking at pedestrians and crossing traffic and what have you. I'm not paying any attention to what kind of signs are in, in that area. I'm not sure they're doing themselves any good by putting it there, but I agree with the other comments. I think that's an area that should be kept park-like.
Ms. Moffett?
No, I just wish that she was here, Karen Tierney. She was the last time. And it's just a point of what is their purpose if selectmen look at it and see no purpose. I'm just saying they have a purpose or they wouldn't be asking us.
I think it's
We
just
look at it as we don't see a purpose and therefore it shouldn't be done.
I think they see it as advertising, just another way of
Yeah.
a name. In some ways also the fact that they have it on Main Street already.
It doesn't say Peg Noonan Park, does it?
Mm-hmm.
This
It
application is
does.
requesting it.
Right up on Main Street, Peg Noonan Park, see attached photo, right up the top.
Oh, I see, right, okay.
We've already given them variance for the other 4 spots.
I
So
do
this is
not
just this
like,
one.
excuse me,
Yeah.
I do not like the idea that you do for one, you do for all. I think if there is a certain time that something is special or it's different, I understand that. But if it does start some type of a precedent, that you would say, oh, Peg Noonan Park would be loaded with signs, I wouldn't like that at all.
Yeah.
But I did not see this as they're going to be loaded with signs. I see one sign, it's larger than all the others, and there's some reason that this organization, the Falmouth Corral, see a need to put a sign at Peg Noonan Park, and if it starts something, then it would have to be, we'd have to have a discussion, but they've got a reason why they're asking us.
And again, if it were a community event, one-time thing, this is actually asking for 4 different
Yes,
time
it is.
periods.
Yeah.
We're going to see that sign, I just think once we see that sign over and over again, there will be other organizations that say, huh, that's an interesting idea, let's jump on the bandwagon, and without a policy in place to direct them, I think I would be a little bit leery about
But they
it.
also have them on the Congregational Church, Highfield Drive, and the John Wesley Church.
Right.
So, I would make a motion that we not approve the request.
Second.
Motion and second, further discussion? All those in favor say aye, or
Aye.
opposed to the opposition, okay?
Right.
So we have not approved that. All right. The next item is a board discussion about the road easement at Seacoast Shores. And I just want to start this off with, this is a discussion among the board as to whether we want to consider abandoning the easement that is there, not whether we're actually going to do it, but whether we even want to consider it. The situation that we have from our town council is the easement has been established. It is not an easement that we can transfer to some other entity. It is not something, but that if we did want to consider going through the process of abandoning this easement is what I've proposed to the board. Do we want to consider that possibility? Pat?
Well, my first comment is I wasn't really sure what that meant. It just says like discussion of the easement, and I didn't really know until I started reading, Frank Duffy's, that there was maybe some consideration about abandoning the easement.
I think that's but that's a major point, that there
Yeah,
really
that's-
isn't even notice about possibly taking these folks' property rights that are deeded. And I think that, as Pat said, we originally were looking at this just the cease and desist order.
Well, and I would think if we were going to do that, it would require a public hearing, but I
Oh,
don't know
absolutely.
whether that's true or not.
I mean, again, it's a 2-step process. Do we even want to consider this?
All right.
And if we don't want to consider this, we can say no. If we do want to consider it, we're talking probably about a 1.5-year process.
Right.
That's going to involve a hearing, it has to go to town meeting, it has to, it's a very, very lengthy process to abandon the easement. I just wanted to raise the question, do we want to consider
Well,
that
I've been
discussion?
thinking about this ever since I really understood that we were talking about the possibility of abandoning the easement. And I went back and I read all of them, I read the emails from town council, and the fact that the developer of Seacoast Shores back in 1947, actually, because there are 1 or 2 streets that actually go from the water to the water, from Eel Pond to Childs River. There are only a couple of streets that go all the way across in Seacoast Shores. Most of them end at Edgewater Drive East or Edgewater Drive West. So I'm thinking that in 1947, the developer made sure that Bayview, Bayside, which one is it? Bayside, went
from all the way across, from water's edge to water's edge. And then over the years, we know that the beach, the Seacoast Shores beach area, actually is a public way, because that whole road is a public way from, what did I just say? From Eel Pond to Charles River. From water's edge to water's edge, it is a public way. So in thinking about, then in what year was it, 75? That the town voted to actually
Take Bayside Drive.
take it as an easement to the beach. And so I'm thinking that how important it is, since there's limited access to people in Seacoast Shores to the beach. I mean, they only have few roads that actually go to, I shouldn't say to the beach, to the water. And most of the people, I guess, who live there have their property rights go to the water's edge. So there's only a couple of places where you can actually, all the people who live there and can actually get to the beach or to the water's edge. So I'm thinking that maintaining a public way is really important. And I would think that we would have to think very, very seriously about whether or not, and I know what you're thinking is maybe that the town doesn't somehow abandons the easement that the town has on that area from the Edgewater Drive to the water. And I don't know what you do with it, turn it over to the association or something, or abandon the easement and then it becomes either a private way or a public way. I don't know, but I don't see anything, I don't see any real reason to do that, and doesn't it work the way it is? I mean, it's a public way to the water's edge, and I know that the association has signs up there, and there's a certain restriction about residents or non-residents. But theoretically, if that's a public way, that beach is open to anybody. I mean, anybody could go down Bayside, Bayview, I can never remember. Bayside. Anybody could go down Bayside to the water's edge. Not on the private side, but on the public side, anybody could go down there. And that's not the way it is right now, because the association, I think, controls who gets past that point.
Or would like to.
Or would like
Right.
to. So we have the two issues. We have the association who requires people who are going to the beach to show some identification that they are residents or guests of residents. And yet, on the other hand, it's really a public way and it's a public beach. So I think abandoning that easement and turning it over to the association I think that's a big deal, and we should think very, very carefully about that. And
Yes,
we
ma'am.
should look at the benefit to the town of keeping it as a public way. I mean, not so much the benefit to the association and to the people who live there, but taking something that has been a public way forever and ever, it seems like, is a pretty major decision to make.
It is major, thank you. And it goes town-wide. There are many beach access areas that are important for the public, not just folks that live right in the neighborhood, but people in town. The chair asked if he would be able to go to the beach, and if we were to decide as the association requests, rules such as private property, no trespassing. Answer, no, you cannot. That is the answer. And so the problem is, I think that this is a bit of an attempt at an end run to try to have, that the town has no interest in abandoning this easement. In fact, quite the opposite. The town has an interest in continuing public access. And I think for the association to try to leverage the Board of Selectmen in order to get some more weight behind their position against folks in the neighborhood who take the position that there should be continuing access is really an inappropriate use of the board. And I think that to the extent that the hearing originally mentioned the cease and desist order, I think that has to remain until the neighborhood does what I think the board mentioned at the last meeting, which is to work with the neighbors to resolve this dispute.
Ms. Moffett?
Well, I think the first thing is to understand, with what you are saying, is to understand what's going on over there. And the first thing that I would say is that area is sand, and it's 53 feet. And the association has everything else. So from the time that the association did all of taking care of all of the erosion that was going on, and you would do that about every 7-8 years at $30,000-$40,000. The town never paid for that. Then, as the association is growing and as Seacoast Shores is changing, many of the houses there are rental. And the people that live in the rental house also have the right, as every single person in Seacoast Shores has a right to go to that beach. The 53 feet I'm not discussing at this point. I'm talking about the part of that beach that is the association beach. The next to think about on the 53 feet is if the public is going to be allowed to use that, where do they park their cars? There is no parking down there. So if they're coming in and they don't have a place to park their cars, it's going to be people's front yards or driveways. Also, who's going to maintain it? Can people come and put their boats in? Can people come and play ball in that area? Who's going to be there to maintain and keep order? And is the town going to come over and say, yes, we're going to protect this 53 feet? The point of the easement in saying that if the town wants that 53 feet of sand, there's an obligation from the town. And I don't know if the town's going to do that.
The answer is the town will treat it like every other easement or beach interest it has. And in terms of the parking, you know, Falmouth publishes the amenities at every beach. First of all, I don't even know whether or not this beach is included. I think not. But there is no practical demand for beaches where there isn't parking for outsiders. And that's not where they tend to graduate. It's, in other words, there's equality across every beach in this circumstance where there is public access. So it's not a special problem for this Seacoast Shores particular beach.
Well, where are they going to park?
Again, this is no different than any other place. Every beach has the same issue.
They have no right to park anywhere.
That's right.
They can't. It's
So
illegal.
So when the public comes in,
Driving, then they're going to get towed. They should get towed.
Then they're gonna get towed.
Ticketed and towed. They do not have the right to park there.
Right.
They have a right to walk onto that beach.
they have, absolutely.
Right, and that's it.
Absolutely. But I think it's also in projecting how that's going to look in 3 to 5 years, because the erosion happens, I guess, about every 5-7 years. And it's always been taken care of by the association. The town has never paid for that. So I would say that once it's open to the public, and that's fine, it's saying the public can come in, they'll figure out where they're going to park, but then when the time that the erosion happens, they'll have to figure out how they're going to do that. My point in saying this is the association has kept the beach, the private part, and everyone can go on that beach. There's no limitations of who can and who can't. It's the renters that come in and they want to use the beach, and all the association wants to know is, who are the people that are coming? Now you have on the side, public. So you're mixing two very different things. So if there hadn't been so much work done by the association, and if I don't see that in 3 to 5 to 7 years, that part that is public is going to be, it's all going to be eroded. Right now, if a group of people think that the public part is going to be something that is going to satisfy their needs to go to the beach, the association is not going to protect that. They're not going to take care of that. And for the people who pay the $300 to the association, you can see that that part, they're taking care of it. So if it's an easement, fine, that's fine. But it's a point of financially, who's going to take care of that 53 feet? And is it going to have boats? Are they going to launch kayaks? It's just there's an issue about who's going to take care of it when you have this other part that is maintained by the association. And if the town wants to put an easement up there, then take care of it.
Well, we don't take, I mean, it's not the town's responsibility to take care of the easements that we have. It just is an easement that the town does maintain for future needs and for public access. But there are lots of public access easements that exist all through town that the town does not maintain.
I know that. But in looking at that, are they looking at a beach that is maintained and is paid for? And people do pay for that, and you're running the two right next to each other.
Well,
Okay.
when you think about this, it's an easement, and it's a public way, but the town doesn't own it. Just because it has an easement, it doesn't own the property. So we have, just because the town has an easement, it doesn't have any obligation, in a sense, to maintain it. So it's sort of a, I don't know, I suppose it's been going for so many years without a lot of controversy between the town and the association. I mean, the association takes the responsibility for it. They've put a lot of money into it, I know that. They put a lot of money in with the sanding, with the sands. But the town doesn't own it. It just has an easement that allows the public to use it. And I can see the problem with the association saying, okay, if you want to use the beach, you have to be, we're going to check your residency, or if you're a renter, where you're living. So I can see there is a bit of a problem. And I guess the question is, how much of a problem is it? How much of a problem is it for the association and for the residents of Seacoast Shores? And how much of a problem is it for the town if the status quo just would remain the same?
And that is exactly the point. This isn't a problem for the town. It's a problem that the residents that are near to the beach are dealing with and grappling with, and needs to continue to work out. This really isn't something that is something that the town is motivated and is putting forth. This is an attempt by the neighborhood to see if the town is interested in giving up the easement. And that's first of all, it hasn't really been put properly before the board in that respect, perhaps. But the access issue is what it really triggers. And for the access issue across the town, public access is important to maintain.
And when the public access was denied this summer, that's when the town manager stepped in and said, no, you cannot block public access on the public way in which the town has an easement. Sam?
And I might say that is actually what stirred the conflict,
Right.
which bothers me. It seems to me the way for us to get rid of the conflict is to go back to the way it was handled before and not have the problem of people being confronted about whether they have rights to that beach area or not.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
I have just a little bit different view, that it's a police issue. If there's a conflict in that area, the town manager's action was simply it really was just a proper police action and notification in that sense. So I do think that it was handled correctly and should be maintained in that function and validity until there is no more dispute. Because it's not something, neighbors should not be fighting against each other when, that could be dangerous. It's not exactly the most productive way to deal with it. And so I think it was proper for the town manager to put the letter out stating that this, there is a cease and desist on trying to keep people out of the town access.
Rebecca?
I just want to think about, there's 400 families, residents, who belong to the association. I read the letters that came through the email, and that was 26 people. So there's 400 people in Seacoast Shores that have access to the Seacoast Shores beach. There's 26 people, which is about 5% of the number of people that have paid, who are concerned because they have been asked to identify themselves. It was never a point that they could not use all of that part of the beach. The 53 feet, which the association has maintained, has paid for the erosion control, has taken care of it, that 53 feet that we're talking about, that 5% of the people in Seacoast Shores are concerned that it's a public way and everyone should be able to go through there. But visually, when you stand and look at it, this area is what the association has paid for. To say that it's a public way, say it's a public way, but think about what you're destroying at that point, because I will say that if it isn't maintained by the association, those 53 feet will then be the downfall of that 53 feet of beach, because no one's going to be paying for that. The association isn't going to be paying for it, and then it would be the public who are nowhere around. They're not going to pay for it. And if there is any kind of a control issue, it isn't going to be the association that is going to be taken care of a public way. So we're starting something, and we're looking at something that at Seacoast Shores, the association was growing and growing, and also the house values of Seacoast Shores is growing and growing. And there's a variety of people who are interested in living in that area in a very peaceful way. And to say that 53 feet of sand is causing all of this problem, when you think about how many people Seacoast Shores takes care of. And I think that in thinking how it's building and how it's coming together, this association is very active. They have money in their treasury, they pay for what they need, and to say that there's going to be an issue with 53 feet of sand is make it a public way and then figure out who's going to take care of it.
So I'm going to get back to the question. Is there any interest in considering abandoning the easement?
Well, there certainly is right here.
So you would like to make a motion to consider that?
Absolutely.
For the purpose of a vote, I'll second. All those in favor?
Oh, wait a minute. So let's talk about the motion. Now, we've been talking about the beach and the use of the beach and all that, but we really have not discussed the either or of abandoning the easement.
Okay.
Which,
I felt we have.
what?
Yeah, I agree.
You do? That we have discussed it?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Well,
All right.
There's a motion on the floor.
All right. If you want to make a motion, then.
I make a motion that we abandon.
That we can start the process or we look into the question of banning the easement.
Yes.
Okay.
What?
All those in,
We have a motion and a second?
yep.
Okay.
All those in favor? All those opposed? No, defeated. We will not be doing that.
Okay. Well, the issue's not going to go away, so we're going to have to look at some.
Unfortunately, but I believe our aspect of the issue
Has
it is
gone away.
that we are not going to consider abandoning the easement. The easement is in place.
And now we go.
The neighbors should take another, try it working together.
Next item is fairly lengthy and tedious for audience members. We have, I believe, about 100 licenses to approve renewals on. As listed in our agenda. We're going to go through them fairly quickly, but if there's anyone who wants us to hold any, please let us know as we read through the list. The first are for all alcohol licenses, all alcohol restaurants. Anejo Mexican Bistro, Bear and Boots Gastropub, Cape Cod Country Club, Casa Vallarta, Chapquake Grill, DJ's Family Sports Pub, Falmouth Country Club, Fishmonger Cafe, Flying Bridge Restaurant, Hong Kong Restaurant, J.R. Brody's, La Cucina Solmar, Liam McGuire's Irish Pub, 99 Restaurant, Parkside Market, Peking Palace, Fusion Grill, Quahog Republic Dive Bar, Silver Lounge, and the Conference Table.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Next are the All Alcohol Club, Woods Hole Golf Club, and the Midway Trap and Skeet.
Move approval. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next are the All Alcohol Inn Holder, Coonamessett Inn.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Double A, All Alcoholic Package Store, North Falmouth Liquors and West Falmouth Market.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. The Wine and Malt Restaurant, CF Main Street, Crab Apples, Homeport Sushi and Kitchen, and the Ryan Family Amusements.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Wine and Malt Package Store, Holly Park Variety, and Rapid Refill.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Common victual license, Anejo Mexican Bistro, Bear and Boots Gastropub, Burger King, Cape Cod Country Club, Casa Vallarta, Chapquake Grill, Crab Apples, The Conference Table, Dana's Kitchen, DJ's Family Sports Pub, Falmouth Country Club, Falmouth Percy's Place, Fishmonger Cafe, Flying Bridge Restaurant, Homeport Sushi and Kitchen, Hong Kong Restaurant, J.R. Brody's, La Cucina Solmar, Liam McGuire's Irish Pub, 99 Restaurant, Parkside Market, Peking Palace, Percy's Place, Fusion Grill, Quahog Republic Dive Bar, Ryan Family Amusements, Silver Lounge, Starbucks, and Woods Hole Golf Club.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Just noticed that we do have two Percy's Place there.
Oh,
But
we have two Percy's Place?
We have Falmouth Percy's Place at 40 North Main Street and Percy's Place at 40 North Main Street.
I
I'm
know.
sure it's only coming up once on our licenses, so,
So it's either one or the other.
right. All those in favor say aye.
Well,
Aye.
I was wondering if we're still operating.
Yeah.
It is?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, entertainment. Casa Vallarta, Fishmonger Cafe, Flying Bridge Restaurant, Hong Kong Restaurant, J.R. Brody's, La Cucina Somar, Liam McGuire's Irish Pub, Peking Palace, Fusion Grill, Quahog Republic Dive Bar, Silver Lounge, and Woods Hole Golf Club.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And when I wondered about whether it's going to be doing anything with Woods Hole Golf Club, whether it's actually going to be doing food, entertainment, and serving alcohol this year, but we'll get the money from their license anyway.
Right.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. The ayes have it. Sunday entertainment. Casa Vallarta, Flying Bridge Restaurant, La Cucina Somar, Liam McGuire's Irish Pub, and Fusion Grill.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Amusements, DJ's Family Sports Pub and Ryan Family Amusements.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Class 1 used car dealer, Falmouth Pier 37.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Vehicles for hire, Double A Taxi, Alvis Taxi, KB Transportation, and Weber Livery Service.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. The next item is a request for the letter of support from the Selectmen for Senate Bill 1798, dealing with funding to provide monies for the post-closure activities at nuclear power stations. Ms. Moran, this was on your request.
Yes, I wanted to see if the board would like to write a letter in support of Senator Wolf's bill. And I'm just, look, there's been a lot of press about the issue lately, that Entergy is going to shut down Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station by June 1st, 2019. And so looking ahead, and in terms of the consumer's interest in this shutdown, Senator Wolf has put forth a couple of bills to ensure that Pilgrim operates safely through the closure and decommissions it in the proper way that would protect the public from bearing the cost of Pilgrim's shutdown. And so I just want to see if this board would take a vote in favor of writing a letter in support.
Ms. Moffett?
But it doesn't include any financials behind it, it's just a letter of support.
Correct.
Okay.
I would make a motion to send a letter of support of the bill as established by, or as filed by Senator Dan Wolf, Sarah Peak, Michael Moore, Thomas Coulter, and other members of the General Court to establish funding to provide monies for the post-closure activities at the nuclear power stations.
That the power company does that.
Yeah.
Second.
Motion and second for the discussion. Ms. Moffett?
Explain to me where the funding comes from?
The state.
From the state, to make sure it's...
Yeah, it's
you know,
it's a bill to ask the state to provide.
Right, funding.
No, it would be the power
Power company
Pilgrim
itself.
Power would pay for it.
Oh,
as
well, that's
opposed
And
to
other
the
members of
consumers.
General
Yeah.
Court
Yeah.
to establish funding to provide monies for foreclosure. Well, the state would have some responsibility to provide funds based on this.
What the bill is asking is that the fee be collected every year
Oh, that's
from
right,
the power companies,
$25 million a
paid to the
year.
state to create a fund to be able to
That's
That
right.
makes
pay
more
for the
sense.
That's what
deaccessing.
it is.
The
Okay,
company,
thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, the
Okay.
company puts up 25 million
Okay.
every year. I think it's 25 million, isn't it? Yeah, 25 million.
Every year?
Annual post-closure funding fee of 25 million.
For
Each
year?
nuclear power station in the Commonwealth, so that would be for Pilgrim. They would have to provide 25 million to the state every year to deal with the post-closure, because it takes a lot of time to do it. You can't do it in 1 year.
Sam?
Yeah, at this time, there is no way to ever close Pilgrim entirely. If they decommission it, it's only in terms of producing energy by it.
Right.
But the spent fuel rods have no place to go. They have to be stored on site. So I think this bill is just basically anticipating there's going to be a maintenance cost that's going to go on in perpetuity. And so until the U.S. government finally does find a storage place for spent fuel rods, you know, they're going to stay with those plants. And so I think this is an excellent bill, and I'm more than happy to support us sending a letter in support of it as well.
In our motion to approve, would you also approve Ms. Moran drafting a letter and
Yes,
for submission?
yes.
Of course.
Surely. But
You okay with that?
Oh, sure, I'll do that while I'm eating Thanksgiving dinner.
I don't think it has to be a very long letter, quite honestly.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think the
Absolutely.
rationale is pretty clear.
I'll be happy to work with the staff on that. Thank you. I saw you waving at me.
All right, we have a motion and a second to support this bill. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Just
None.
to clarify, is that under the signature of the chair?
Under the signature of the chair. Yes. I'll be his secretary, and I'll be further dissuaded from any other agenda requests.
Individual selectmen's report. Ms. Moran?
I did want to mention that the EDIC has received many responses to the RFP it sent out with respect to the solar panel project. And at the upcoming meeting on the, at the EDIC on December 8th, which is in this room at 8:30 in the morning, the board members will review the proposals, discuss them, try to narrow them, and make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen for the board to review it hopefully sometime in December. So if anyone is interested, please attend the meeting. That'll be one opportunity to hear about that. If you can't make that meeting, then come to the Selectmen's meeting when that's on the agenda.
Anything else? Mr. Patterson?
Yes, I did attend the school committee meeting last week, and they're entering into the budget season, of course, but they covered a lot of other items. But let me just touch, they're concerned about the fact that kindergarten grants are drying up and not going to be a significant contribution to revenues. Chapter 70 is always an uncertainty. Right now, they don't anticipate any changes to their out-of-district special needs costs. So, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Energy costs seem to be stable, if not going down right now, but they have contract negotiations they're dealing with. And the student population is currently stable. It's not going up or down significantly. So those are the kind of the big factors that they're trying to anticipate and work within. I would say that one of the things that just came out of that committee meeting is really the seriousness with which the staff really takes maintaining and improving the quality of education of the programs. It's really, when you look at it from that perspective, it's pretty impressive how they struggle to be more effective. And one of the areas that they've targeted for improvement is, of course, the state has been pushing toward including special needs children in regular classroom environments. But not all those classroom teachers are in the best of positions to be able to actually engage them and effectively educate them. So there's a push right now to try to come up with some in-service programs to further enhance the skills of the general ed teachers so they can keep more of the special needs students in those classrooms. The other thing I was going to mention, I did mention, as you heard my question to Maggie, that I went to the Cape Cod Commission's regional policy planning meeting that was intended for stakeholders. Most of the participants were actually planners. Brian Curry was there. But it was excellent, really long-range thinking, or at least starting to put together the long-range thinking to how we look at things like the energy needs of the community, obviously the coastal resiliency, community development efforts. It was a very good discussion about the kinds of things we need to be keeping in mind as we move forward. Of course, the town struggles with those same issues, but it's nice to know that there are other people that are looking at it and that we can share our thoughts. The last thing I'll mention just quickly is I attended our library's strategic planning focus group meeting on Saturday, and was very impressed. There were people from all over all walks of the town were there present, contributing to ideas on how the library could potentially think about how it could be more effective in meeting the needs of the town.
Thank you. Ms. Moffett?
I just have a housekeeping question. When we receive emails from the public, is it that the chairman answers, you are the only person who answers those emails that come in and all of us read?
No, we don't have we have not established that as a policy.
Okay.
Most
I
often,
was under the, okay.
typically, almost every email, I actually make sure that Julian gets it and have him respond.
Okay.
There may be other emails that don't fall in that category that do not necessarily get a response.
I do the same thing. And
Okay.
I'm sure to never copy more than one selectman so that the open meeting law is not, in play.
Okay, because I was under the impression that the chairman would answer, because otherwise there could be a different answer from each selectman who speaks to whatever the issue is. So I thought there should be some kind of a statement from the chairman about how it's handled when an email comes in to all 5 of us. And you say that you would handle it by giving it to Julian.
That's what I typically do.
Well, I would just say past practice, the chair is responsible for the emails that come into the board, and whether you delegate them or not is up to you, but I think Becky's right, that's the way we used to do it, so that everybody wasn't responding and then people were getting different
Right.
responses.
I mean, I
It was
guess-
always, the chair at least took responsibility to make sure that the emails were responded to.
Well, I guess my interpretation, it's my responsibility to make that decision as to whether they do get responded to. There are certain emails that we all get, 5 or 10 a day, that I do not respond to. And would hope that this board is not expecting me to respond to the ones that are not coming from our constituents with issues that are worthy of response.
I just know that as far as I'm concerned, I never answer them. I mean, I just know that the chairman's going to take care of that, and I don't do that,
I
but,
think that's a fair assumption.
okay.
Ben?
Well, I think the way I look at it is that, we're not responding on behalf of the town. We're looking toward our staff and collectively to respond. So I don't ever think that it's right for us to respond on our own personal opinion at all. We're here representing the citizens of the town. Now, if we want to refer a writer to someone, or we refer it to someone, I think that's our role, not to actually respond back with a position statement. You can talk to
I
them
agree.
talk to them on the telephone if you want, share your thoughts, but not on the behalf of a selectman. That's all.
I don't know how else they would look at my response. They send it to a selectman, it would be a selectman that's responding.
Yeah, if there's an email that you have a particular question about whether it's been responded to, I'd ask that you send an email to me saying, could you please respond to this, or have you responded to it, if you feel it is something really worthy, or you're worried about whether it did get a response or not. Having that little kick in the pants to make sure it gets done, I appreciate. As a reminder. Ms. Flynn?
2 things. I attended the Joint Base Cape Cod meeting Wednesday night. There were not that many people there, so it really wasn't a very robust agenda. People mostly went around the table and just commented on things that were happening. And the base commander wasn't there. His adjutant was there. So I don't really have anything of any substance to report on the meeting, but I usually try to go. I mean, we're all invited. It's just that I usually try to go, just because I'd like to see people that I haven't seen in a while. And Bud Dunham, who's the town manager in Sandwich now, was chairing the meeting, which was kind of nice. The other thing I wanted to mention was the county commissioners had an emergency meeting Saturday morning at 9 o'clock because we learned that a substance was found on the property of the Fire Training Academy, and it was an unknown substance, and so we had it tested. And it turned out that that PFOS, perfluorine, I can't even remember the name. It's not a contaminant. It is an emerging, it's a contaminant of emerging concern. So it's not on the MSA list yet. But because it is on the emerging contaminant list, we decided that we better meet and discuss what we should do. And it's possible that it may have come from something used at the site, during fire training. So so what we did was we created a policy going forward that the only substances that can be used on the property is water. That, no joy, because a lot of times what fire departments use now, because they can't use anything that has PFOS in it. They use Joy detergent, but the company that makes Joy says, no, there's nothing in there that you should be concerned about. Nobody really knows because it's never been tested. So we've said no more using Joy because it foams up. Joy foams up really well. And So anyway, so we had that meeting, and that's what we decided to do, and it was a fairly lengthy decision, and it's probably on the website. But every fire department was notified. Training will still continue, but only water will be used for
Won't
any
be
of
as
the
fun.
training sessions. So,
Won't be as fun.
yeah, right. Yeah, there won't be any foam.
Oh, I thought
Yep.
you said fun.
Foam.
I'm really asking for help, but I know that David Vieira has arranged for some tours of the
Yes.
dispatch center at the sheriff's complex. And I looked on my calendar to see when it was. I think it's next Monday, isn't it?
I think it is
so.
Monday.
And
yeah.
what time is it? Because I didn't put it in there.
I probably have it.
Mr. Chairman, I believe it's at 2 o'clock and we meet at the Sheriff's Department.
Okay, thank you.
But is it Monday?
Yes,
The
Monday
30th.
the 30th at 2 p.m.
Yeah, it's at the 2
I meet at the
o'clock.
county jail, I think, and then go from there.
Joint Base,
Okay.
Right.
Joint Base Cape Cod.
Connery,
Meet at the
yeah.
sheriff's parking lot.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's before you get to the gate, so you don't have to go through the gate. I had to go through there the other night to get to that meeting. They look at you, you know.
Report from town manager's office?
Just very briefly, you have the town manager's report, which is actually covered actions that you took this evening. A couple of items I'll hit on is coming right out of town meeting, we began the annual budget process. We concluded all of the initial budget hearings with all of the departments, and we'll begin the process with the finance director, taking a look at the areas where some modifications need to be made. The departments did a great job defending their requests for the year. We, as usual, have significantly more in requests than we have in available funds, and so there will be a bit of a challenge this year to come in with a program of service that's consistent with what you've seen in the past. We expect that to be the case with some modest enhancements in service, and we'll spend some time focused on that for the next couple of weeks with the budget due prior to the holiday, Christmas holiday. And the second report is the Spring Bars Road project. The site visit for that project was on Thursday. We had a very, very fine turnout, including the potential developers. We had the Community Preservation Committee is represented by the chairman, as well as Ken Buckland, who's been in charge of the open space project. The conservation staff was there, the planning department, myself, and Kyle Swanstrom, who was handling the Model Consular Services. We had a good turnout from the town staff in terms of supporting the project, and there are at least two qualified from experience standpoint, just based on who they are, that we expect to have a competitive process. And those are due December 23rd.
Fantastic.
I just wanted to mention the letter that we received from somebody who wrote to the school department about non-residents being admitted into the exercise classes.
It was
And
anonymous.
it was anonymous,
Yeah.
and the fact that it precluded some residents from being able to register because the enrollment had exceeded the capacity. And so I guess the question was, should we limit the programs? But those programs aren't even our programs. They're not even the school department's programs either, are they? They just happen to run them at the school. But I think they're run by other organizations, are they not?
That's correct.
Anybody know? You know.
It's actually not under the auspices of the school committee, but the school committee allows those programs to go on, right?
So,
I actually called.
oh, there it is. It was sent to Nancy Taylor.
Right, it's the
anonymous.
Falmouth Community School,
It is.
and that's under whose auspices?
I think it's, I don't know. I can't answer your question.
It's isn't there a group, Falmouth Night School or something?
Yeah.
Isn't
Well,
there?
the community school.
Yeah, they put out.
Community school at night.
But I
Falmouth
can't tell you.
Community School?
Falmouth Community Schools?
Yeah.
Yeah, Falmouth Night School. or
I
whatever.
called
Yeah, we need to look into it a little bit more to figure out exactly who it is. It's not something any we discussed in the past, so.
Yeah,
Can I
and
just-
I don't know whether it's under the auspices of the superintendent or not, to tell you the truth. But I know that even the staff, the administrative staff, actually uses offices in the schools. So there's got to be some at least.
There's got to be some connection with the school, yeah. Well, maybe, the letter went to Nancy Taylor, who's the acting interim superintendent.
Right,
So,
but we still have to find out who's in charge of that.
who's in charge?
Mr.
The
Chairwoman?
last thing I'd like to report is I went to the ZBA. That was that.
Sam was there. Yeah.
We sat for quite a while.
3 hours.
Heather summarized it.
Wow, you did? Oh, yeah, you did.
Mr. Chair?
It was quite entertaining TV watching.
I apologize, I was sneezing during Ms. Harper's report, and I just wanted to emphasize my, I'm thrilled that there's so much interest in the Spring Bars Road project, because this was the initial step to gauge interest in part. So that is, in fact, a very positive report, and I didn't get the opportunity to say that till now, so thank you.
Any other business?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.